Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. Marvel. My Wife is Black Phoenix. Chapter 41. He frowned, and after thinking about it, his eyes lit up again immediately. It's really familiar. He thought about it. This story is nothing else. It is part of the plot mentioned in the movie Daredevil when he was a child. Matt's father caused his son to go blind because of his own fault. Always feel guilty about this. In order to be able to help my son cheer up again. So he decided to give up his life in the gang and return to the boxing ring. However, he did not expect that his actions would instead anger the black boss Jin Mei in Hell's Kitchen. Caused a murder to myself. Kim Bin in Hell's Kitchen. The beginning of the tragic fate of Daredevil. After roughly sorting out the follow-up plot, Luan finally didn't make the same fuss as before. At this moment, frowning, his complexion finally began to become serious. Suddenly began to think seriously. At this time, do you want to come forward and help this kid like Matt? Although this kid seems to eat for nothing every time. But the actual situation is far from the case. Luan is the kind of person who keeps letting others take advantage of it. Don't look at Matt, it seems to have been eating for nothing. In fact, every time you finish eating, after watching a movie, he will help take the initiative to clean the video room. It's a small worker hired by their video studio for no money. Therefore, the relationship between the two parties becomes more and more harmonious. Luan looked at the little boy Matt, and got a little closer. If you look at it from this perspective, he shot to help rescue Matt's father from Jin-hee, naturally it is understandable. Only, it's not this that really makes him feel tangled right now. It was that he was worried, and he rushed to make a move at this time. Will accidentally expose his identity. Break yourself for these 2 months. With Phoenix, a rare peaceful life. ... Fortunately, this entanglement, Luan did not last long. Because it followed closely, the God-level selection system that had been silent for more than 2 months. It finally recovered again. ... God-level choice from Future Daredevil. 1. What did you say? I don't know. Pretending to be ignorant of this, let the Daredevil plot continue to develop, watching his father live and die. Reward title, Stoneheart Effect. The defense of the 5 internal organs such as the heart increases by 50%. 2. Between friends, it is love to help you, it is duty not to help. Without exposing yourself, I would like to mention Matt a little bit. Reward title, Surface Brother Effect. Talking with strangers plus 100%. 3. It's not just a miserable childhood that can be a hero. Help little Matt save his father and smash Jin Bin's conspiracy. Reward a copy of Fiend's Covenant. 3 options in a row popped up in front of Luan. Luan glanced at this moment. After discarding the first option directly. Look at the second and third option. It was caught in entanglement again. In fact, when he makes a personal choice, he is still very inclined to choose the second item. However, in the second item, the title of superficial brother given to it is too cheating. So hesitation again and again. He finally focused on the final choice. Determined to help this little Matt, and at the same time will meet the well-known figure in Marvel Jin Bin. This fat man, known as the Heiji Taibao. It felt like Hong Jinbao in Marvel, he was fat and able to fight. In the absence of mutant and no super ability. It can be used in Daredevil, Spider-Man, and even Captain America. So many superheroes' subordinates, escaped from birth time after time. Such a person should not be underestimated. Thinking so, Luan returned to his senses, but he rarely reached out and patted the shoulder of the former little Matt below, and said, "Tomorrow your father's boxing match, I will go with you. Come with me." Little Matt is not stupid. In fact, he was extremely clever. Otherwise, it is impossible afterwards, in the case of blindness and such a large birth defect. I can still successfully enter Columbia University and become a lawyer. It is precisely because of this. After hearing what Luan said. After a moment of astonishment. Little Matt also guessed something immediately. The joy that was overflowing on his face instantly dissipated a lot. Follow closely. His eyes became serious. Actually guessed it. She spoke again. Directed at Luan, asked again, and said, "Luan, are you worried the gangster will attack my father in a boxing match?" Luan didn't expect that Matt this stinky boy could be so sharp. But at this moment, he obviously didn't intend to deny anything. Hear Matt press. Then he nodded, solemnly said, "Yes, I do have this worry. After all, the people in Hell's Kitchen are never so good at dealing with them." Matt is naturally grateful when he hears this. Although I know, the manager of this video room has always been a big brother with a knife-mouthed tofu heart. But he really didn't expect it. The other party, at this time, will be so benevolent and righteous. That's the gangster in Hell's Kitchen. Compared with any gang force under the world, it must be hundreds of times more fierce. Where their gang is, it is no exaggeration to say that it is Longtan Tiger Den. But here is Luan. Even if I said, I just broke through. How not moved him, but after moving, but still frowned, declined Luan, and said, "No, the manager, the situation over there is too dangerous, so you still don't go." "It really doesn't work. I'll go home and tell my dad not to go to this boxing match." "Stupid, do you think that if this game is not played, the gang will spare you? If they are so easy to talk, can they still be called a gang? As for me, hee, you brat, are you worried about me, the manager, aren't you strong enough?" Quote, "Don't worry, I'm in a hurry to open a shop in Hell's Kitchen. There are really no two brushes, how can it work?" Quote. As he said, Luan raised his hand and suddenly grabbed the handle of the tang knife on the bookshelf beside the sofa. Swish, the long knife is out of its sheath. There was a snow-white blade of light passing by in the field. This scene happened too fast. When Matt came back to his mind at this time, that tang dao had actually been put on his neck. As for the t-shirt on his upper body, he was hit very quickly. It was cut in half directly from the middle. The blade fell. Daredevil was stupid. It was completely unexpected that Luan's strength would be so strong. Although little Matt does not like gangsters, he still has eyesight after spending so many years in Hell's Kitchen. Just like Luan's knife just now. Whether it is speed, strength, or accuracy, all reached the limit he recognized. That's how the single hand is. The owner of the video store in front of him named Luan is enough to have his own place in Hell's Kitchen. How is this possible? The manager, who are you? After a moment of consternation, Daredevil squatted. Looking in the direction of Luan, his face was full of doubts, and he obviously wanted to ask something. But this time, Luan didn't give him any answers. The expression on his face suddenly became serious. "Take the knife again and say lightly, nothing is impossible, Matt. As for your question just now, everyone has their own secrets, don't just explore them." Luan said, "This is also a reminder." The Daredevil, who was still in shock just now, was also righteous when he heard the words. Only then did I remember what I had just said, which was considered to have inadvertently violated the taboo of Hell's Kitchen. That's okay, never ask others about their origins. Except for the poor who lived here since they were born. Outsider in Hell's Kitchen, who doesn't have his own secret. This can't be explored casually. Thinking of this, little Matt immediately bowed his head and apologized. "Sorry, Mr. Liu, I was the one who made a mistake." "Then tomorrow, about the boxing match. Go as usual, I will follow." Luan replied. After saying this, Chin found his coat and threw it to Matt. When Matt heard the words, his heart was settled. Bend and thank Luan again. Today, after still helping to clean the entire video room, I left here with my school bag on my back. Luan, Matt is really a good boy. Chin stood beside Luan with emotion. "It's really good." Luan nodded, and naturally felt approved of little Matt. Otherwise, he would not choose the third option. And at the moment, after saying this, he closed his eyes and entered the system space again. In the system space, at this time, as he chooses to complete. The third reward of the God level option was finally released. Ding! Congratulations to the host for the choice reward Fiend's Covenant. Accompanied by the system's prompt sound landing. A quaint sheepskin scroll suddenly appeared in front of Luan out of thin air. Luan stretched out his hand to take it, and related news emerged in his mind. Fiend's Covenant. The special contract designated by the devil in Otherworld, the signatory will actively sell part of the soul to the host, and will always become the host's slave. And to the host, maintain eternal loyalty. Is this Fiend's Covenant? Interesting. Luan scanned the relevant contract, and the corner of his mouth raised a nice arc. Obviously, I also feel that the reward given at this time is not bad. But after being happy, she was also a little worried. Began to struggle, who should use this contract? Chin has a good relationship with him, and he doesn't need to use this kind of contract to bind his lover. As for Daredevil, he was still too young at the moment. Binding him is a drop in the bucket, and the income is too small. Luan would not do the same. Thinking about this, just look at the situation of Luan right now. With this Fiend's covenant in your hand, it really feels like a hero is useless. He sighed and felt a little regretful, saying, I knew it, not so early. Let Magneto go and let him go out to take care of it. If there was this Fiend's covenant at the time, it would seem like a good idea to tie Magneto down as a thug. Quote. Luan lowered his head and muttered softly. But now it's too late to say this. God knows where this global wanted man went to hide. Forget it, let's take a step and take a step. The contract is useless now, and it will always be useful in the future. Thinking about it, Luan stretched out his hand and put the contract properly. Move your mind again and exit the consciousness space. I found that the Daredevil at the corner of the street had not completely gone far. Looking up again, the clock in the attic was less than a second past. As Luan's personal strength continues to grow stronger, he found that compared with the outside world, the flow rate of his time in the system was getting slower and slower. It's already a completely static space. So right now, although he talked a lot with the system, but in the eyes of the outside world, it only took a moment. Even Phoenix beside him didn't notice the slightest strangeness. After watching Daredevil go away, Phoenix went back to the video room with Luan and rested. It's still a fat house life with snacks, movies, and sofas. It's just compared to daytime. At night, the door was closed, and only Luan and Phoenix were left in the video room. More, kid, unsuitable activities. More than 2 months, although not long. But Phoenix is under the special development of Luan. Little white rabbits rise is quite amazing. Plus, this girl doesn't know where from the corner of the video room. Discovered the Love Action movie CD in Luan's private possession. Following the above, it is considered to be a sturdy and practical learning of Bohau's ability. So this time recently, the combat effectiveness has greatly increased. On the special battlefield at night, instead of changing the passiveness of the past, he took the initiative to attack. In the past few days, I have really killed off with Luan. It shocked Luan himself. Tonight, it was still tossing till the wee hours. The two men lay down on the bed and fell asleep. Phoenix, although he cares about little Matt. But for tomorrow, Luan may have to face the matter of Jin Bin. But I didn't feel worried. In fact, after experiencing the apocalypse incident, Luan is in her heart. It has almost become the omnipotent God. This trust in Phoenix, Luan naturally felt happy. But he didn't get so proud of it because of this. Although after this period of time, there are achievements to unlock. He has increased his control over the many fruits to about 80%. But in Luan's heart, he was also very clear. This power is not enough in the Marvel world. Not to mention the big purple potato that is about to descend on the earth in the future. He hadn't even been able to do the Fat House Thor. But he was not depressed by it. On the one hand, it is naturally because the fruitful ability has not been developed to the limit by him. As for the other side, the reason is simpler. His greatest reliance is not just this fruit. It is a God-level selection system. Anyway, it's too early for the big purple potato to arrive. Take your time, you won't necessarily lose to this guy at that time. Luan thought in his own heart, turned his head, covered the quilt, and it started. Roar fell asleep. Time flies, and soon the next day will come. Luan didn't bring a piano. He didn't find Matt either, but was alone and rushed to the boxing ring first. The reason why I came here at this time. I want to meet Matt's father first. It was originally intended to persuade Matt's father to leave with the future Daredevil. It's easy to make a move by yourself, and kill the quartet directly, once and for all. I never thought about it when he arrived at this time. It happened to hit the boss of the boxing ring, looking for Jack Daredemon's father, to talk secretly. Seeing this, Luan's expression moved slightly. run ability, and leaned in quietly. Because of the effect of the title of Shen Yin, his current skill is added. He wasn't worried at all, he would be seen through his figure by others. At this moment, he was close, and the sound of the two people's conversations clearly reached his ears. Jack, don't be so stubborn, you are 42 years old, don't you think that you can always win the next battle? What is a boxing match, but it's just a show. Help me this time, I'll give you $200,000. Think about the future of yourself and your children. Money is more important than glory. The gang agent in a neat suit, Fran, was talking at this moment. After saying this, I lighted a cigarette. Also left. He spoke lightly, but at this time he spoke, and what he said was like a boulder weighing on Jack's heart. He lowered his head again and looked at his hands, the boxing gloves that had begun to be old. Jack Murdoch's heart was caught in a great entanglement. On the one hand it is the promise to the son, on the other hand it is the warning from the gang. He has difficulty choosing. This is the fate of ordinary people in Hell's Kitchen. Jack's face was full of pain. Luan, who was lurking on the ceiling, already knew it. Only then did I know why Daredevil's father angered the gang in Hell's Kitchen. Co-authoring is not what happened when I was a thug before. It's because of the boxing match. Looking at this posture, is it promised to fight the counterfeit match, and finally jumped back and directly coked the opponent. Luan knew the ins and outs of the whole thing, and there was a trace of understanding in his heart. He looked up again and looked at Daredevil's father. After thinking for a while, he didn't come out to show his identity at this time. This time point is very important. Jack Murdoch gave up his life and defended his own glorious choice. In his view, it was not only the sublimation of his own life. Also for the future, Matt Murdock, the character of the Daredevil Master, played a very important role. It can be regarded as the most important catalyst for Daredevil's growth. Although Luan intends to save Jack, avoid Daredevil's tragic childhood. But he didn't plan to curb the growth of this guy. So at this moment, I think twice and still choose to hide. Jack Murdoch, next, it's up to you. Luan thought so. After that, he continued to choose to hide in the dark. He had great expectations for Jack, Matt's father. Fortunately, the other party did not disappoint him either. At the boxing match that night, although he is a 42-year-old veteran, but it is playing his own blood. In the end, he relied on his indomitable will. The opponent was consumed alive. This kind of action won him a lot of applause in the boxing ring except for the gangster who secretly wanted to control the match and Fran. At this time, little Matt rushed directly to the boxing ring. And his father, embracing excitedly. Once again, I am proud of having such a father. At the end of the game, Matt was still full of excitement in his father's jersey. But Jack's gaze was filled with worry. After getting out of the boxing arena, Jack looked at the dark alleyway leading to the Hell's Kitchen. Hesitation again and again, still speaking, intending to push Matt away. Matt, you will go home alone tonight. Dad, there is still something to do here. I need to go back to the boxing ring later. I will go back to see you later, okay? If it is called, there is no reminder from Luan. Matt may nod innocently. He obeyed his father's will. Adertisement. However, after Luan's remarks yesterday, Matt also realized the danger of this matter. Where would he retire at this time? So when I heard my father say this, instead of retreating, he stretched out his hand and grabbed his father's sleeve tightly and shook his head towards him. Seeing Matt's reaction, a touch of relief flashed through Jack's eyes. But still sternly said, observe, it's okay, at most it's just some trouble. You go back first. It's dangerous for you to follow me. No, it won't be dangerous, Dad, I have a bodyguard for you. Let's go home together this time, that group of gangsters will definitely not succeed. Quote. Matt spoke firmly, although he did not see Luan from beginning to end. However, he was sure that the shopkeeper, who is usually carefree, would not release his pigeons at this time. He must be in the dark, watching himself silently. But he believes in Luan. Jack in front of him didn't know anything about the store manager of this video store. Because of this, watching my son react like this, I only thought he was talking nonsense, deliberately comforting myself. Jack smiled bitterly, and was about to continue to persuade his son to leave. But never thought, the two had just walked to the alley. Haven't gotten deep yet, there was already the roar of cars behind him. A sudden brake stopped vomiting. A black Cadillac with its doors wide open. A group of 4 people, dressed in black, all walked out of the car. Among them, there is Frank, who warned Jack before the start of the game. At this time, looking at the father and son in front of him, the cold voice said again. Go, the Hell's Kitchen is so big, have you gone? Oops, watching a few people from Flange come here. Jack's face suddenly paled, the heart tightened instantly. Returning to his senses, he reached out his hand and put little Madra behind him in the first place. Looking at several people in Flange, they said vigilantly, Flange, what on earth do you want to do? Do what? What do we want to do? You don't know. I told you before the game started, right? Let you carefully consider the future of yourself and your children. It seems that you are not very clear about what you are thinking about. Quote. Fran snorted coldly, speaking with anger in his eyes. Although Jack had already expected such a scene when he made this decision before. But right now, when I really saw Flange, he led everyone to surround himself. My heart still inevitably sighed again. He was mentally prepared this time, but Matt, thinking of him, sighed again. He said softly, don't do this, Fran, how about this, I'll give you all my bonus this time, and let my son go, how about? Your bonus? How much is your bonus worth? He had grabbed Jack by the collar. He mentioned him in front of him, with a grim expression. Do you know how much our boss shot in this game? It caused us to lose almost $2 million. That's $2 million. Bang, Flange growled. At this time, a punch has been smashed into Jack's face. In fact, if Jack and Frank are 1-to-1 at this time, even if there are 5 Flanges on the opposite side, they are not Jack's opponent. But now, under the gaze of several sturdy men, Jack is afraid to fight back. Can only bear all this in silence. Matt next to him, feeling this scene, immediately yelled. You bad guys, let go of my father. He stepped forward and wanted to help. There was a famous man next to him, with quick eyes and quick hands, and pinched him in one hand. There he laughed again, with a chill on his face. What's the hurry? I'll see you in a while and go with your cheap father. After speaking, a few big men walked out and surrounded Jack. Looking at the faction this time, it is obvious that I intend to beat him up first, and then talk about it after I have a bad temper. Do not want. No, shop manager, where are you? You should do it soon. Matt was also a little panicked at this moment. The store manager. What store manager? Leave him alone, this blind man. I think I was frightened crazy. Ha ha ha, I haven't paid attention yet. You said that I found out that he was still a blind man, pitiful. Send him and his father out of this world, you say, we have done something good thing. Several people talked and laughed. Jack heard the words, there was both anger and despair in his eyes. I thought that this time, the two of them were really doomed. But I never expected it. At this time, the dark place at the end of the lane. Suddenly there was a strong wind. The sturdy guys who just talked and laughed swept past with the strong wind. All came to an abrupt end. Then, one by one, his pupils dilated. This time it was so plopped and all fell to the ground. What is going on? Except for Frank, Jack and Matt, everyone fell to the ground. Watching this scene, everyone is naturally very puzzled. He immediately raised his head and looked towards the dark place at the end of the lane. Then, under Daredevil's exciting gaze, a man holding a tang knife, holding 2 ice cream cones in his hand, walked out slowly. At this time, everyone in the eye was swept. Eyes finally fell on Matt Murdock. Some shrugged helplessly, said, sorry, I just saw the opposite KFC, the second cone is half price, and I went to buy ice cream. I didn't expect these guys to move so fast. Do you want an ice cream? Quote. Luan said, shaking the extra ice cream in his hand. 2 cow in my heart started the routine of unscrupulous merchants. The second half price seems to have been earned. But he couldn't finish eating 2 ice creams. Luan looked depressed. On the opposite side, Daredevil Matt Murdock, hearing Luan say this, was full of black lines, and felt a little speechless. This guy, what time is it? Want to buy ice cream to eat? After silently complaining in my heart, Look at the people in black who fell on the ground again. The expression on the face is getting more and more excited. No longer about the ice cream, continued to struggle. Instead, he was excited, directed at Luan's side, and asked again. Manager, all of this, did you do it? The manager. Matt, is this the store manager in your mouth? Next, Jack, Daredevil's father, heard Matt say so. Only then came to mind. Thinking of what Matt said to him on the way back. He just thought that his son was simply comforting him. It now appears that he was thinking wrong. What Matt said is true. Indeed, he knows the real strong. In an instant, 4 sturdy men were resolved. Thought of this. Jack spoke here, but couldn't help but ask again. The guys who fell on the ground. You mean them? They are dead. Luan raised his head and glanced at Jack, but he didn't hide anything. Very plain way. What are you talking about? Dead. That's it. Died. Quote. Jack and the others were all taken aback. Definitely is dead, otherwise what do you think? Luan shrugged helplessly. His current control of gravity can be accurate to people, but there is really no way to do it. It only stuns people instead of killing them. So at that moment, he used the gravity boost to directly crush the inside of several people's heads. Make this move to yourself. Luan didn't think there was anything wrong with it. Anyway, these guys are gangster thugs, their hands are covered with blood, it is not wrong to kill them. He looked calm, and Matt opened his mouth wide in front of him. Unexpectedly, chatting and joking with him on weekdays, and even being bullied by him from time to time, the manager of the video store, who seems harmless to humans and animals, would actually be so decisive when he actually started his hands. In the blink of an eye, 4 lives have already been taken. Matt whispered softly, feeling a little confused at this moment. Some are not quite clear, the harmless teenager and the gang in front of him. Who is the real demon? He thought to himself that Jack at the back was already startled roar. Suddenly turned his head and pointed behind him. It turns out that at this time, they were talking about their skills. Flange had already ran out towards the outside in a panic. Quickly stop him, you can't let this guy go. Jack shouted. Following along, he also chased out. Too late to think about it. Jack only knew at this time, if he left so freely. On their side, they will all suffer big troubles. But he moved fast at this time. Someone moved faster than him. It was almost the same time he spoke and said this. On Luan's side, his right hand was opened and he had already grabbed it forward. Heavy fruits suction. Ability urged. There seemed to be a huge amount of wind pressure in his heart. It's like an invisible chain again. Instantly bound the hands and feet of this Flange. Follow him and pull back slightly. Tighten the chains. Flange, who had just ran to the door, had his whole figure flying back straight at the moment. Completely uncontrollable, he knelt directly beside Luan with a click. Watching this scene, Matt was dumbfounded again. As for his father Jack, his legs were weak at the moment, and he almost knelt on the ground. Mutant. This is Mutant's method. Jack is not a silly boy like Matt, who doesn't know anything about the world. It is precisely because of this. After a moment of astonishment, Matt instantly guessed the origin of Luan's side. This is a mutant. My son, unexpectedly found such a powerful mutant as a helper. Matt thought. There was ecstasy in his heart for an instant. And just now, he had already ran to the entrance of the alley and was pulled back by Fran. At this time, I only felt that the soul was going to be scared away. Turning his head again, he looked at Luan behind him with a smile on his face. At the beginning, there was no more aggressiveness when facing Jack and his son. Instead, he opened his mouth and began to plead. However, Luan didn't have the slightest intention to listen to him right now. At this time, he stretched out his hand and held the flange directly, like a chicken. He dragged him to the side of Cadillac. He squeezed him into the driver's seat. He walked towards the back seat of the car. I also saw his action. The 2 talents next to Matt woke up like a dream, and asked again. Luan, where are you going? Once and for all, solve all the troubles. Luan replied. Matt didn't speak. Jack has changed color next to him. Surprised, Roar said, you plan to directly attack Jin and shoot. Why, no, Luan asked rhetorically. Definitely not, it's just Lu. Manager Lu, don't underestimate Jin Bin, he also has mutant. Jack waved his hand and reminded Luan in a tactful way after thinking about it. Although Luan just showed his strength. But this kind of strength, from Jack's point of view, is indeed not Jin's rival. Who dares to underestimate the Black Street Taibao? Luan heard the news, but was noncommittal. At this time, after waving his hand with a faint smile. It also asked Matt, these two guys, to go home and wait for the news. Jin Bin's lair took these two guys, and went to break together. It's troublesome. As for himself, he is behind the Cadillac's back seat at the moment. He glanced at the frightened Flange in front of him, and said again. 10 minutes for you. For 10 minutes, I can't see Jin Bin, you die. Quote. Yes, I see. Flange nodded like garlic. After seeing Luan's terrifying power, how dare he not follow his orders? Ignite at this time and directly throttle to the end. Accompanied by a roar, the Cadillac under the seat, like a beast that got out of its cage, rushed directly into the night. After a short time, he disappeared into the boundless traffic. All this is too late to say, but in fact, it only took less than 10 minutes before Matt and the two entered the lane. But it is these 10 minutes. For both Matt, it was as long as a whole century. It is also after the vehicle has gone far. The two of them woke up like a dream. After the rest of the catastrophe, the father and son returned to God and hugged each other tightly. There are thousands of words in my heart, but at this moment it is more silent than sound. After a long time, Matt, who was held by Jack in his arms, couldn't help but ask again, said. Dad, do you think the store manager can win the next battle? Jack was stunned when he heard the words. I thought of the Tang Dao that the Chinese boy had not been out of the sheath just now. And his terrifying ability, thinking of the rumor 2 months ago. My throat felt a little dry in an instant. After a while, he coughed softly and said, it should be, no problem. If he is the man from the pyramids country. Definitely a final victory. As he spoke, he silently added a sentence in his own heart. Luan no longer pays attention to the roadway. When getting in the car, I am not afraid of fraud by Flange. Instead, he just started to close his eyes and sleep in a fake sleep. The Flange car is indeed fast enough. 10 minutes is not long. And when Luan opened his eyes again, the car, already stopped in front of a magnificent building. Luan tilted his head and looked at this tall building with at least 90 floors. Did not speak. The Flange beside him was a little bit irritated and flattered. Dear Lu, Mr. Lu, Jin Bin's base camp has arrived. He is on the top floor, the 99th floor. I know there is a shortcut to bypass the defense below. If you want, I'll take you there. Just begging you for a while, can let me make a living. Quote. Fran has a sincere expression on his face. Luan looked at him like this, but laughed again. The 99th floor, highly guarded, no shortcuts, I just go straight up. Go straight up. Well, remember to fasten your seat belt. Luan smiled mysteriously. The voice fell to the ground without waiting for Flange to refute. The purple magnetic circle suddenly appeared. Heavy fruits anti-gravity. The Cadillac, weighing nearly 2 tons, suddenly trembled. Then followed closely, under the gaze of Flange's shocking gaze. The entire Cadillac was floating in the direction of the top floor of this building. How is this possible? Fran looked at the ground further and further away from him. The eyeballs will be frightened and will fall to the ground. It is clear, the ability of Luan, the mutant. It was far more terrifying than he had expected before. The entire car swiftly moved up in the night. Although Luan's side, the control is very handy. But unfortunately, he still underestimated Jin He's defensive power on all sides after all. For this building, on Jin Bin's side, it was obvious that it wasn't just a heavy defense set up inside the tall buildings. For the outside, there is also monitoring. It is precisely because of this. This time, when I noticed that there was an unknown object, it started to approach quickly from the outside. Immediately someone started to shoot outside the tall building. In the dark night, the tongue of fire was surging. Countless bullets poured down like rain on the Cadillac outside the building. This is just the 52nd floor. The entire Cadillac has almost been beaten into a sieve. Definitely, it's an attack of this level. It can only penetrate the defense on the surface of the wagon. It is far from enough to injure Luan, who is sitting in the back seat of the car and has mastered the fruits. Therefore, under his control, many bullets had been bounced back before they could get close to his body. But he can do this. The flange in the front cockpit of the car, but it can't. It is precisely because of this. Although only a moment later. But here, flange has been fired by more than 10 shots. The whole person was beaten into a sieve. A pool of blood poured out, and the seat of the car was stained blood. Flange hurts more than roar. Seeing this, Luan shook his head from behind. But did not feel sympathy. Shin said, "It's not that I don't give you a way to survive, but that your boss doesn't give you a way to survive. But rest assured, I will avenge you in a while." Thinking about it, he probed his hand again and punched it upward. He banged and knocked off the roof. Luan turned over and stepped directly on the roof of Cadillac. Immediately he was probing his hand and grabbed it forward. Heavy fruits gravity. Buzzed. Gravity traction. Using the Cadillac that was rushing upwards, it stopped instantly. Then it was like a frisbee being thrown out. Immediately, he slammed into the towering building in front of him. No, avoid it. Opposite, the counterattack has begun. There was a startled roar in the building. And with their conversation. Immediately afterwards, I heard a rumbling explosion. In the black Cadillac, a 2-ton object hit the wall outside the building. As it fell, the whole building shuddered, and the glass-like walls peeled off in pieces. A huge pothole with a size of nearly 4 meters was directly and roughly punched out. Luan stepped on the shards of glass flying above the air. Rushed directly into the building. The more than 20 security officers and soldiers who had just fired at them were directly smashed into meatloaf by Luan's car. But at this moment, Luan is in shape. I haven't waited to wait for a moment of silence for these guys. There was a sound of footsteps behind him. The guards on the other floors have rushed to help. At this time, like locusts, filed out. A moment of effort. 50 or 60 guns have been aimed at Luan's head. Fire. Without any hesitation. No nonsense. Obviously, this group of guards had received orders from the top before they came here. See Luan at this time. All fired directly. In an instant, there were countless tongues of fire surging again. But still did not dodge. Not to draw a knife. Instead, he took a step forward and rushed out directly. The bullet fell in front of him, as if blocked by an invisible wall of air. In front of him, purple ripples appeared. As those ripples spread. Plenty of fruits ability once again. Gravity rebound. Ha. The bullets pouring down like rain just now were all bounced back easily. Boom boom boom. Boom boom boom. A moment of effort. On the wall behind everyone, there was a row of dense holes. And followed closely. The group of guards who had just taken action all fell to the ground and died. Kung fu in the blink of an eye. Luan kills another 100 people. Boss, it won't work. The arrival is too fierce. The brothers on the 55th floor can't hold it anymore. At the moment, the top floor of the building. The subordinates were reporting the news to the person in charge in a panic. The man is 8 feet tall and has a fat body. But sitting there at this time did not make people feel funny. On the contrary, it is like a huge mountain. Even if there is no movement, there is still a terrorist power, like a tide, surging in all directions. This person is not someone else. It is the entire New York, even the entire United States gang, the absolute leader Jin Bin. Jin Bin was on the spot at this time, sitting with crossed hands. Luan, who is constantly striding forward, watched the big killing on the surveillance video. But he was not as flustered and helpless as his subordinates in front of him. On the contrary, there was a little curiosity in the eyes. Here the subordinates pressing. After a moment of silence, he said again. Okay, take your man away and let him up. Ah, what, let him up? The subordinates originally thought that Jin had to arrange an escape route by himself and escape directly. But I didn't expect that the other party would say so. After being stunned, he couldn't help but asked again and said, but boss, the other party is obviously here to trouble us. Just let him up like this, I'm worried. Worry about what? Worry that I will die in his hands. Just a mutant, let him up and let me deal with it. Quote. Jin and snorted coldly. As a gangster who controls the entire Rice gang. He is for mutant. Really not as afraid of ordinary people. Seeing Jin and angry, the subordinate nodded and could only retreat. But I just went out here, and I don't know if the news has been delivered. There was already an explosion from the elevator entrance on the top floor. Immediately afterwards, a young man carrying this Tang Dao. Taking another step, he has appeared on the top floor. It is Luan, since Cadillac parking, by the time he reached the top of the 99th floor. It took a total of time, but only 3.5 minutes. But it's 3.5 minutes. He has abolished Jin and his subordinates, a full of more than 500 people's combat power. Break through most of the line of defense. This strength. It is the one who sits on the main seat and sees Jin Bin, who is accustomed to the wind and waves. A touch of approval gushes from the bottom of his eyes. Regardless of how strong you feel, for the time being, the young man in front of him does indeed have a rare general style. You are Jin Bin. Jin and looked at Luan. Luan naturally saw him too. At this moment, he spoke and asked aloud. Jin did not refute this either. Instead, he nodded very calmly. Without waiting for Luan to speak, he said again. It's me. You are strong, stronger than I thought. It's a pity that such strength is so dead. How is it, are you interested in doing things for me? Quote. After all, Xiaoshang is a Xiaoshang, and it is definitely not accidental that Jin can achieve this position. Just say it now. Even if Luan was murderous, he slaughtered more than 500 of his subordinates in a row, but he came up and said that he would take his life. He is still not in a hurry. He even took the initiative to invite the other party. Count on recruiting the other party into his own subordinates. Aside from other things, just because of his demeanor, even Luan can't help but look at him highly. Brows raised, and then said with some playfulness. Are you going to take me as your subordinate? What about those people who died before? Are you not going to seek justice for them? Justice. Jin Ping raised his head and laughed directly. Some dismissive, said, Hell's Kitchen, or in this world, when has the word justice been said? Isn't it true that the fist is big? I agree with you. Haha, just agree with it. At the first glance, I can see it. In fact, you and I are the same people, aren't they? Join us, I feel that we will become the best partners. In the future, we will notify the entire Quanmi, and even the gangs around the world. It is not impossible. Quote. Jin did not look excited. Opposite Luan was noncommittal. He didn't mean to be bewitched at all. Then he spoke, but calmly asked again. Do you know what I am here for? I recognize that Cadillac. If you guessed correctly, you should have come for Jack and his son. That idiot made me lose $2 million in the boxing ring. I was looking for someone before, but I used to make trouble for him. Quote. Jin did not conceal it at all. Since you know my origins, you dare to let me join you. Ha ha ha, what is there? Friends, don't you know an old saying that in this world, there are no eternal friends, only eternal interests? Jin did not laugh, seeming a little disapproving. The voice fell to the ground, and then added, although you don't know why you made your debut for Jack and his son, trust me, as long as you promise to join us, we will give you a satisfactory answer. Let's talk about your conditions separately. On my side, as long as you agree to join, I will directly transfer the Olympic boxing ring where he punched before to his name. With this alone, he will get no less than 15 million net profit dividends every year. Quote. How? I have enough sincerity on this condition. If he thinks this proposal is too gentle, he still wants to vent his anger. I can also give away a few human meat sandbags for free to take a break from the fire in class. Ha ha ha, just play with him. As long as he calms down, it doesn't matter if someone is killed. I'll take it. Quote. Jin Biao was talking freely, then leaned over and sat on the table. A kind smile rose from the corner of his mouth. However, even though he was laughing at the moment, it still gave people a great sense of oppression. It's like trying to eat someone. This is his usual negotiation technique. Both grace and prestige. The needle is hidden in the cotton. People can't find a reason for rejection at all. To be honest, Luan couldn't help but feel a little emotional when he heard it here. I think it's fortunate for him to be here this time. If he were to be replaced by an ordinary person standing here and hearing Jin and saying this, he might have been really fooled. The conditions he set were too tempting, and there was no reason for rejection at all. No wonder he was so confident at this moment. It's a pity. Thinking about it, Luan lowered his head and sighed suddenly. What a pity. Jin is not a little curious. It's a pity, what you just said is not true. Luan spoke lightly. As soon as the voice fell, I heard a bang. But he didn't do it. But the opposite Jin bin suddenly lifted off the desk in front of him. At this time, he slammed directly at him. Huh. A ray of white knife light passed by. Jin Bin's desk was directly cut in half from the middle. Luan got up again and looked forward. Opposite Jin and had already stood up straight. At this time, he closed his fist and stood. All over his body is fierce flames. Looking at Luan again, he was a little surprised. It's really funny, how do you tell that I was telling you a lie just now? The ruler of the Niayu gang, who is like an emperor, will meet each other and give up his authority directly to strangers. Luan sneered, looking at the opposite Jin Bin, somewhat playful. Your acting skills are still good, but it's a pity that you're a little too generous. It's not like you. Unexpectedly, you could see it all. Then why didn't you open it in the first place? Quote. Jin was puzzled. I just want to see what I want to wait for the Black Street Taibao to deal with it like this. Luan held a knife, somewhat indifferent. Seeing this, Jin looked at Luan deeply, but couldn't help but sigh again. It seems that I am really right. You are indeed the same type of person as me, but you are more arrogant than I am. Is it? If you have the strength, it's not arrogance, but self-confidence. Quote. Luan asked rhetorically. Kim did not answer. Behind him, a cold voice suddenly came out. Definitely is. I'm here, today, you can't kill anyone. When the words fell, a man in a black robe suddenly appeared behind Luan. He walked out of the shadows slowly. Remove the headgear. On his forehead, there was a mark like a living target. Luan turned his head at this moment and only glanced at it. Also recognized the identity of this guy. At this moment, I raised my eyebrows and felt a little surprised. Are you, the Bullseye? Asterisk. He spoke, calling out the name of the Bullseye directly. Looking at the Bullseye, the shock was not because of anything else, but completely unexpected. The Bullseye is already entangled with Jin Bin. But if I think about it again, I don't think it is completely incomprehensible. After all, these two guys. One is a professional killer. The other one is the gang leader. Isn't the old saying all about embarrassment? The two of them were born as if they should be mixed together. So, this Bullseye is Jin Bin's confidence. Luan thought, turning his head and scanning the Jin Bin next to him. Sure enough, he saw Jin Bin at the moment, with a frenzied and grim smile on his face. It is clear, it seemed to him now. Adding the Bullseye and taking the young mutant boy from the front is more than enough. Jin is full of confidence. On the side of the Bullseye, it was even more astonished that Luan had just passed by the bottom of his eyes. To understand became fear, so now, he laughed again. The look plays with the taste, interesting, you know my identity, that would be easier to handle. Boy, there are only two ways to put it in front of you now. First, obediently obey Jin's boss's arrangements and become our thugs. Repay the debts for the 500-odd subordinates you just killed, as well as the destroyed facilities. As for the second, then there is only a dead end. The Bullseye said, flick your fingers, just listen to the tearing air sounds. A toothpick he had just played in his hand was bounced out. This time it actually landed on the wall not far away with terrifying tearing air sounds. Luan took advantage of the situation and looked intently. I saw a flying fly on the wall that was originally flapping its wings. At this moment, he was nailed to death by a toothpick. Not only that, the completely wooden, fragile toothpicks are directly embedded in the wall this time. Although Luan had already known the ability of the Bullseye before that. But at this moment, after seeing it, it is still unavoidable to be a little shocked. For this, anything can be thrown as flying darts. And a guy with a terrifying accuracy. Luan feels that if he is really full of firepower, he may not be much weaker than Hawkeye in Avengers Alliance. But, if it's just this kind of ability, it is not enough to deal with Luan. Thinking so, Luan has already pulled out Tang Dao again. Although not stated clearly, but his action clearly showed Luan's choice. The sight of the beautiful target I just now. The look instantly cooled down. You are looking for death by yourself, he whispered. The voice fell to the ground. He and Jin behind him are not hesitation. Follow along. In an instant, he rushed towards Luan again. Since solicitation is not accepted, then naturally, it can only be killed. The Bullseye was stunned, and then he waved his hand again. Swish. 3 playing cards were thrown directly. With tearing air sounds, ordinary playing cards, in his hand at this time, are as powerful as 3 flying darts. It shot towards Luan. Seeing this, Luan swung the knife in his hand. Play all 3 poker cards directly. And followed closely. There are dull tearing air sounds in the back of his head. Turn around again. It's Jin Bin. This lunatic whose whole body muscles have reached 90% upwards. At this time, the bookshelf for the display next to it was picked up again. Then roared sharply. He slammed it down on Luan's head. Luan can only roll on the spot. Block the knife again. But at this moment, although the long knife blocked the bookshelf, but the body shape of the whole person, it was still caught by Jin, and he used brute force to smash it out directly. Flew back more than 20 meters in a row. Wait until the figure falls to the ground again. Has been forced back from the very center of this room to the elevator. The tang knife in his hand was also following at this moment, buzzing. Like a whine, the tremors kept trembling. What a terrifying weird power. Luan looked at his hand shaking constantly, like a long knife about to jump out of his palm. Feeling too. On the opposite side, Bullseye and Jin joined the two. Looking at Luan who was forced to the corner. They all laughed. Obviously at this moment, both of them feel that Luan this time has reached the point of exhaustion. With such a little strength, do you dare to come to me for trouble with Jin Bin? Hee, to be honest, kid, you disappoint me. I really didn't expect you to be so vulnerable. Jin did not squeeze his fist. At this time, he was a little disappointed. The Bullseye next to him laughed strangely. With a pile of playing cards in his hand, he started playing. Looking at that posture, it seems to be tangled. Which card should be used to end Luan's life? However, the two of them reacted like this, but they did not see what they expected. Luan panicked, looks full of fear. After the long knife in his hand stopped trembling, Luan sighed instead. At this moment, he actually took the initiative to take over Jinhei's words. After that, I was sighed. Disappointed. Indeed, I also feel a little disappointed. The dignified Heiji Taibao, plus the Bullseye, 2 people, are so capable. You are like this. Didn't I come here for nothing? Quote. Luan slowly raised his head. The voice fell to the ground. Boom. The invisible wind swept the entire floor with him as the center in an instant. At this moment, both of them obviously felt their bodies sink. Following that, the pupils suddenly tightened. He raised his eyes again and looked at Luan's expression. Also began to be a little surprised. What's the matter with this power? This guy hasn't used all his strength before. Bullseye startled roar. Finally no longer underestimate the enemy. This time, I just threw out all the playing cards in my hand. Stabbed. The flying cards cut the air, and there was a crackling sound. But this time, 9 playing cards in a row. Even 3 feet in front of Luan can't get close. It's already broken. The weight of the fruit is now under Luan's control. It's like an iron curtain between him and everyone. He doesn't need to do it. Relying on this alone, the general offensive would have negligible damage to him. And this thing is especially aimed at long-range throwing weapons. Takeo in close combat is affected by this. It's not big. It is precisely because of this. From a certain perspective, Luan can be regarded as the natural enemy of the Bullseye. As for this matter, it's not just Luan who knows. Seeing the playing cards he threw, before he got close to Luan, he was crushed directly by the gravity field he controlled. The Bullseye's color changed, and he also reacted immediately, hurriedly whispered, and cursed it again. Withdrawing this time, he immediately began to retreat backwards. Obviously, there is some regret in my heart. I rashly shot Luan before. Watching his reaction, Luan just sneered. Regret now, naturally it is too late. The right hand sticks out and grabs it forward. Heavy fruit's gravity. The suction power was like a chain, instantly wrapped around the Bullseye. Let me go. Bullseye startled roar. Let go of you. Did you just stop taking me down? Are you so soon? You don't take me seriously, right? Luan ignored it. Raising his hand, it was cut again. Ha! Daoguang slammed into the bullseye directly with heavy pressure. The bullseye was attacked, and he snorted immediately. At this moment, blood was pouring out of his mouth and nose. Being restrained by Luan's gravitational force, he seemed to be carrying a mountain on his back inexplicably. The body-shaped speed plummeted. Almost hardly took Luan a knife. So at this moment, I feel muffled, and I feel that my internal organs are going to be misaligned. Watching this scene, Jin didn't dare to be idle anymore. The truth is that the lips are dead and the teeth are cold. He still understands. So now growl. He rushed towards Luan again. The figure jumped up like a lion slaughtered on the grassland. At this moment, he raised his hand with a punch, directly towards Luan's door, and slammed it over. After all, he is one of the strongest human beings with 90% muscles. Facing the golden tie, Luan didn't dare to be careless. Seeing him do something here, Tang Dao with his right hand turned. In an instant, he slashed at him again. Gravity knife big tiger. Roar, the long knife slashed down. Purple magnetic circle, between surging. It was like a tiger leapt forward. A full of fierce flames, like a prairie lion. A sword is like a tiger, indomitable. The two collide. At this moment, I heard a crack. It is completely poured with concrete and steel, and has a specially reinforced top ceiling. At this time, Luan was cut and flew directly with this knife. There was a bang. High-density synthesis steel is under the prestige of gravity knife big tiger. Twisted into twists. This is the case. It's natural not to mention Jint. Cough up blood at this time. When the body shape falls again. On the right arm, there have been countless bloody mouths. It's just a knife. Jin Bin's right arm was actually abolished. But at this moment, Jin Bin, it is too late to pay attention to the pain on his body. He can sit in the position of the underground king of the whole girl. It's not only powerful, the mind is even more intelligent. It is precisely because of this. After a short fight, Jin Bin finally guessed the identity of Luan. Gravity knife, black hair. It's you. You are the guy who planned to do it before in the Pyramids country. Jin did not start roar at this time. His face was instantly as pale as gold paper. Luan watched his reaction next to him, grinning again. He didn't deny this, on the contrary, he nodded again calmly and said. Yes, it's me. It's really you. How could it be you? Jin Bin made a sound like a dream. Don't talk about him. Next to the bullseye, at this moment, the heart also sinks to the bottom in an instant. The little desire to fight that came out of my heart just now was smashed in an instant. Pyramids country. This is the boy in the Pyramids country. The guy who confronted Apocalypse and easily destroyed a capital. Known as the strongest mutant guy in the world. What the? Is it bloody mildew after 8 lifetimes? How could Jin Bin this idiot provoke him? The bullseye returned to his senses, and my heart was really upset. No nonsense to follow. Turning his head, he went straight to the rear and began to flee like crazy. Run. In today's situation, it won't work if you don't run. The people here are really too strong. Only escape. There is a way out. Right now, those who hold the same idea are not just the bullseye. Next to Jin Bin, it is exactly the same. Turning his head and flying towards the rear. Fortunately, at this moment, there are only 3 people left on the top floor, Luan, Jin Bin and Bullseye. If there are others here. Seeing this scene, I was afraid that my eyes would fall out in fright. At this moment, of these 2 people, one is the world's top killer, and the other is the underground emperor of New York and even the United States. On weekdays, they are all high-ranking and thunderous figures. But this time, after meeting Luan, I was scared to the point of being as panicked as a mouse. The contrast is great. It makes people doubt life. And watching them flee at this time, Luan himself didn't feel how surprised. At this time, the brows were slightly raised, and the corners of the mouth were filled with a playful smile. I want to run now, can I run? He sneered and raised his right hand. Gravity knife hell trip, exertion. Buzz. Void trembles. A purple beam of light instantly shrouded Jin Bin who was about to escape. After that, I heard a cracking sound. He was hit by an invisible iron fist directly from midair. The 99-story high-rise building was completely pierced in an instant. Jin Bin's figure disappeared directly from the crowd. Watching this scene, the Bullseye, who originally wanted to escape, stiffened in place for an instant. At this moment, there is no longer fear anymore. It is full of despair. Is this a fart? You can't escape at all. ... Thinking so, he turned his head and looked at his Luan. Also simply, at the moment, both feet are soft. It just threw it directly and knelt in front of Luan. Obviously he intends to use this method to pray for Luan to raise his hands high. Can let him go. Seeing this, Luan shook his head. He is not a guy who likes to let the tiger go back to the mountain. However, Tang Dao in his hand was raised at this moment. Is planning to pick up the knife and drop it. It directly ended up with this guy. No one thought of it. This section is on the bones. In his head, a familiar system prompt sounded again. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully activating the God level selection from Bullseye. 1. Cut the grass without removing the roots, but the spring breeze blows and regenerates. Hand up the knife and drop it, immediately kill the Bullseye. After the selection is completed, reward a bottle of Fei Jai Happy Water. 2. True Strong, never afraid to return to the mountain. Invincible is too lonely, leave yourself some opponents. Let the Bullseye leave here, the task is completed, and the reward the control of the fruits is plus 5%. 3. Talents are rare, salted fish also needs help, and talent is rare. Keep the Bullseye for your life, put it next to yourself, and be a thug. In this way, if you encounter someone who doesn't open your eyes in the future, you don't need to do it yourself, which is so troublesome. Choose to complete, reward you have a chance to draw a lottery. The surprising lottery interface once again popped out in front of Luan. Luan glanced across the list of options listed above. At this moment, the brow furrowed slightly. It's unavoidable to fall into entanglement. In fact, in his heart, he still prefers the first choice. The hand raised the knife and dropped it, directly slaying the Bullseye, once and for all. But what is the reward for the first option? It's too little. For a human head with a Bullseye, change a bottle of Fat House Happy Water. This is not a good deal. As for the second item, let him go directly. Although the reward is good, Luan is not willing to make this choice. It is advisable to chase the poor with the courage left, but not to be the overlord. He still understands this truth. Rush, just let go of the Bullseye. That is purely looking for unhappiness for myself. If you look at it from this perspective, it seems that there is only a third option left. Don't kill him, don't let him go. Instead, keep him by his side. Only, such a figure who is used to being a killer outside, staying by his side, is not burying himself. Luan frowned slightly. There are also some entanglements about this. But after a while, I thought about that roll of parchment that was still lying quietly in my system space at this moment. The corner of his mouth raised a faint smile. Yes, I forgot that stuff. Fiend's Covenant real. Before facing Daredevil Matt Murdock, when the lottery was drawn, the good things burst out. He thought it would take a long time before he could use it. I didn't expect it. This time, at this juncture, he has already found an opportunity to use it. Before, he felt it was a bit wasteful to use this thing on the underage Daredevil. If you look at it now, it was just right to use him on this Bullseye. Thinking about this, he lowered his head again and looked down on his knees in front of him, with a panic-stricken Bullseye. Also simply, turning his hands at this time, he took out the roll of parchment directly from the backpack. Just thrown in front of the Bullseye. He said directly, sign it. I started with the parchment paper, and here at the Bullseye, I immediately felt the fluctuations of heart palpitations surging out of the paper. When he saw this, his pupils suddenly tightened. Although I don't know what is the reason for the fluctuation of this stock. But I also know that this thing is unusual. Even the killer career of licking blood for many years has made him feel a faint sense of crisis from this roll of parchment. However, he was also very decisive at this time. Feeling the crisis right now, it's better than being beheaded directly by Luan and killed Roar. Thinking so, the Bullseye is equally crisp. Bite your finger directly. With blood from his fingertips, he wrote his name on the bottom of the parchment scroll. He wrote his real name. A shocking scene appeared. At this time, the blood, but just got the parchment paper. The black text that was originally all over the paper began to glow with a strange red light. Immediately afterwards, on the Bullseye side, under the stare of stunned eyes. When I saw the words on the parchment, I began to link together autonomously. Like a big black hand, suddenly peeked out from the inside of the paper. Just live on the heart of the Bullseye. The black palm fell. The target eye instantly felt that the blood of the whole person was about to freeze up. Then, under Luan's stunned gaze next to him, a translucent spirit body was caught from the heart of the Bullseye. That is the soul of the Bullseye. And this soul, except that most of it was absorbed by the parchment at this moment. The other small part is like a bridge, directly on the center of Luan's forehead. The soul contract is concluded. Luan only felt that the whole person was shocked. Looking at the Bullseye again, I felt a different kind of feeling. It seems as long as I want to. There is no need to do anything, just a little thought. You can easily wipe out the Bullseye on the spot. This Fiend's covenant, really interesting. Luan thought, the corners of his mouth raised slightly, and a smile of satisfaction instantly appeared. And this feeling is not only unique to Luan. The Bullseye opposite him clearly felt the same at this moment. At this moment, my whole body trembled. Immediately after, looking at Luan in front of him, there was a touch of complexity in his eyes. It's definitely, besides being complicated, it's more fearful. He didn't think about it. He gave in first this time, and later came to look for Luan to find the place. Although Luan is very powerful. But for the killer, what he is best at is not a head-on one-on-one duel. It's an assassination. The enemy is in the light and I am in the dark. Have mental arithmetic and unintentional. The Bullseye really didn't think that he would have no chance of winning against Luan. So at this moment, kneeling down, although it seems to be praying for Luan's side, he is magnanimous. Let him make a living. In fact, the heart has been thinking crazy all the time. It's just that those calculations just now are doomed to fail at this moment. Although he didn't know what the sheepskin scroll just meant. But at this moment, the kind of fear in his body towards Luan can't be faked. He knows, this time, his life is completely in Luan's hands. Hey, this time, it's really lost. The Bullseye sighed inwardly, but he is not a tangled person. Then he looked at Luan again, and he reverently bowed down. Respectfully said, "Serve the Bullseye, I have seen, the Master." Chapter 51. The Bullseye kneels down. The Master called Luan couldn't help feeling a little in a trance. To be honest, he really hadn't been there before coming here. This time I will take a servant back. He is still in a trance here. The Bullseye kneeling in front of him had already adjusted his mentality at the speed of light. What is a killer? To put it bluntly, it is someone else's knife. From the Bullseye side, whether to be a servant or not, it doesn't really matter, it's just a name. Moreover, after truly accepting the setting of becoming a servant of Luan, instead of being too disappointed, he became more and more ecstatic. The reason is simple. That's Luan's side, which is much better than Jin's. As now, it is almost universally recognized as the strongest mutant. It's also an honor to be able to saddle him before and after. Thinking of this, the Bullseye thinks about what Jin Bin confuses Luan before. Only then can I understand why the final result is failure. The pattern is so different. What an all-girl appointment, the gangs of the whole country. It sounds very tempting, but in fact, as far as Luan is concerned, it is totally insignificant. No wonder, people didn't blink their eyes at the time. Thinking about it this way, the Bullseye thought of what he had seen on TV with his own eyes. That huge meteorite that easily destroyed an entire country's capital. My heart can't help but get excited. He raised his head again and looked into Luan's gaze. It is inevitable to bring the meaning of the question and expectation. This time, what kind of grand plan does my new master have? Master, what do you want me to do next? The Bullseye is full of blood. I have already thought of the picture of myself following Luan behind him, antagonizing most of the world. But the next moment, wait for Luan to speak again. But it was a moment, and he felt like a basin of cold water, poured directly on his head. Let his whole person's heart become cold and cold. Matter. Do you manage the video store? Huh, what? What shop? Video shop. It's a shop that sells DVDs and VCDs. The Bullseye is dumbfounded. After regaining consciousness, my heart said, I'm a killer, where would I take care of a video store? But at this moment, in front of Luan. But he didn't dare to complain. I could only lower my head, and replied with a squat. No. Luan thought for a while, and then asked, then you can cook. Don't use Western style, learn some Chinese food for me, stir-fry a small farmer's fried pork, mapo tofu, dried potato shreds and so on. The Bullseye continued to be stunned. When I spoke again, my voice became more anxious. No, but boss, I will kill, he said excitedly. But at this moment, when these words were spoken, Luan was scorned. What is the ability to kill? What I need is a servant who can cook and manage business. You are too good. Boss, forget it, I will use you. This will not, that will not, then sweep the floor, right? Let me tell you, my shop does not support idlers. If you don't even know this, humph, then don't work in my shop, and just sleep in the street at night. Quote. Luan looked dissatisfied, and the Bullseye next to him heard Luan say this again. At this moment, I immediately felt that I had suffered a ton of crit in my heart. Shin said, I'm a killer. Why do you want to cook? My new employer has misunderstood something. I am the world's top killer. Isn't the job that I ordered to kill people? Why do you let me cook? Isn't that a cook's business? I'm angry. The Bullseye was maddened by Luan. It is also this time. I suddenly realized that the future that seemed to follow Luan was not as beautiful as I had expected. But right now, he has signed Fiend's covenant. Where is there any choice? No matter how unwilling it is in my heart. At this time, I arrived at Luan's house. He could only obediently take off the black robe on his body. Put on the apron honestly and pick up the mop. Started to clean and hygienic. At the moment, the two of them, although they left Jin Bin's lair, returned to the video store. But this matter, of course, can't just end like this. The actual result is just the opposite. The whole thing is obviously just beginning. Hell's Kitchen, although it is recognized as a 3-no-matter zone. But that's just confined to small troubles. For example, the death of a person in a dark alley, even if the police or high-level officials know it, they will feel it is not strange. And the movement made by Luan before was really too big. Among other things, the shock caused by the collapse of an entire 99-story building on the spot is enough to cause a sensation in the entire country. In addition, witnesses said that there may be signs of mutant activity. This series of factors are added together. Naturally, it attracted the attention of relevant senior management in an instant. So it was almost Luan who had just left their front foot, and a large number of policemen had arrived at the scene on the back foot to conduct related exploration work. There is also rescue. The nearly 100-story high-rise building just collapsed like this. It is impossible to do no harm to the surrounding things. Fortunately, Luan's previous fight with Jin Bin was at the real gang headquarters, and most of the gatherings around were gang members, and there were almost no civilians. Therefore, Luan's move here is not considered to have affected civilians. It can even be said to have done a great deed for the people. Anyway, a group of police officers who were present saw the gangsters who fell to the ground and wailed. All of them are not good at heart. On weekdays, these guys are covered by gold and have high-level operations. One by one was arrogant in front of the police. Although the police gritted their teeth with hatred, they suffered from the lack of evidence and could not bring them to justice. This is good for now. This dialed down, no evidence is needed, and they have no good fruit to eat. Injuries and bones, some are even worse than going to jail. They all say that evil is rewarded. Seeing this scene, the police in the Hell's Kitchen area were naturally very happy. But happy to be happy, they still have to give an opinion after all about the outside world's attention to the American fishing vessels. So waited on Luan's side. When I turned on the TV on the second day, I saw such a somewhat absurd news. Open black lens bracket. The high-rise building in the west of Clinton District, due to disrepair for a long time and pre-construction problems, suddenly collapsed last night. For the impact on the surrounding people, the relevant person in charge has been arrested and held accountable, and the relevant departments solemnly apologize for this. And for this reason ROAR urges all sectors of society to stop self-inspection actions and put housing and construction problems first. Close black lens bracket. It's in disrepair for a long time. It's really a reason to be so bad. In the video room, Luan narrowed his mouth slightly while watching the news on TV. His face is also very contemptuous. And beside him, little Matt was shocked by the sturdiness. Obviously, this child was taken home directly by his father after leaving the dark alley last night. So right now, this is the first time I know this news. Hearing this right now, the whole person was naturally shocked. Turning his head and looking at Luan next to him, he asked again and said, "Really, Manager Lu, this building collapsed, couldn't you be the one who did it? Otherwise who do you think it is?" Luan asked rhetorically. He has been with little Matt for so long, and he also feels that this brat can be trusted. So at this time, I didn't deliberately conceal anything. At this moment, I heard Luan questioning. Little Matt's expression became weird in an instant. Following on his face, there was a burst of cloudiness and uncertainty. Obviously, I didn't expect Luan to be so powerful here. After a long time, this came to mind. I thought of the tall building I saw in the direction lock of the Shicheng district of Hell's Kitchen before I was blind. I thought of middle-aged people in suits and shoes who kept coming and going inside. At that time, he thought this was the only pure land in Hell's Kitchen. Looking at it now, he is so naive. Where is the pure land there? It is clearly the Hell's Kitchen, the darkest place. Unexpectedly, the bad guys now are so good at disguising. Thinking about this, Daredevil lowered his head, but he couldn't help muttering again. Luan was next to him, but took advantage of the stubbornness and said lazily, "So, you stinky boy is still too young. We in China have an old saying, knowing people, knowing faces, not knowing heart. There is no bad person, we'll write the word sin on his head. So, your kid will have a snack in the future." Quote, Luan seems to be ridiculing, in fact, he is also mentioning Daredevil. After all, this brat, as a superhero in the future, will have to deal with criminals. The average criminal is not terrible. But if you bump into a prisoner with a high IQ, and don't pay attention, it's really easy to suffer a big loss. Definitely, little Matt could not fully understand his hard work at this time. At this time after a brief loss. After that, this guy fell into the ecstasy of the destruction of the gang again. Lifting his eyes again, he asked Luan again. "Anyway, Jin and his dark forces have been annihilated, right? This is a great thing for Hell's Kitchen. The manager, you said that the public security near our neighborhood will not. Would you think that this thing has just changed for the better?" Better. Luan was taken aback. Look at the happy look of little Matt next to him. He suddenly shook his head and poured cold water on him. "Then you really think too much. If I expected it to be good, the law and order in Hell's Kitchen will worsen for a long time because of this and fall into turmoil. You stinky boy, it will be late at night, it's better to go out less. It's impossible for me to be the same as last time, every time I can arrive in time to save your life." On little Matt's side, there was no time to pay attention to Luan's last kind reminder to him. After listening to what Luan said this time, the whole person obviously fell into a deep shock again. At this time, he raised his eyes, with an unquestionable expression, and said again, "On the contrary, it's getting worse. How could this happen?" Luan replied, "Why not? Before Jin Bin ruled the entire Hell's Kitchen, and suppressed other gangs not daring to appear, now Jin Bin is dead. They started another round of gang shopping for the vacated territory, which is not normal. NS. So, in the next period of time, the entire Hell's Kitchen will fall into a period of turmoil." Matt finally understood what Luan meant. Following the look, he became solemn. With some anxiety, he said, "Then Manager Lu, what shall we do next? Can't we just sit and wait for death?" Matt looked anxious at this moment. Luan was lying on the sofa at the moment, taking a sip of ice-cold cola, but his face was full of comfort. Seeing Matt like this, he narrowed his mouth unconsciously, and said, "Why can't you just sit back and wait for death? What? Matt was stunned again. Luan said lazily. Boy, don't you think of me as a superhero who insists on maintaining world peace, right? Fighting is very tiring. Didn't you see that I have already settled the merger? This is not easy anymore. Next, what's going on in Hell's Kitchen and what is it to do with me? As long as those gangsters don't come over blindly and make trouble for me, it's fine. Bullseye, are you right? Quote, Luan educates Matt. While speaking, the front of the conversation turned, but he looked at the Bullseye that was holding a mop next to him and mopping the floor diligently. Just now, he was about to be moved by Matt's words. Also wanted to shoot a killer Bullseye. This time, I was once again shocked by Luan's declaration of salted fish. I heard him questioning this time. Then he nodded in despair. Looking at Luan again, there was a vague pleading. Stop brainwashing me, boss. I won't kill people. Mop the floor well, can't it? When Luan saw this, he narrowed his mouth indifferently. Looking at the reaction of the Bullseye, I didn't hold back, and started silently complaining in my heart. I think this is a notorious killer in the comics. In terms of mental quality, how could it be so bad? Just to say a word, it turned out to be about to collapse. It is speechless. Thinking, he also shook his head. After looking at Matt next to him again, he was silent and thoughtful. It is through this effort. Entered the system again. Last night, in order to rush home to sleep before 10 o'clock. Luan's selection of the god level ended, but the reward he received was not used much. Right now this section is on the bones. To be idle is to be idle. Now that Luan remembered. Then simply use the lottery ticket again. Open black lens bracket ding. Congratulations to the host for successfully using a lottery ticket. The lottery draw for the planes of the heavens begins. With him here, use the lottery ticket again. The familiar lottery page appeared in front of him once. Although it is not the first lottery draw. But Luan sighed when he saw the golden lottery roulette in front of his own eyes when Kerala started spinning. I can't help but look forward to it. Review the past few draws. He has never picked up junk items. Whether it's Heavy Fruits GH 325 Potion or Resurrection A. In fact, they all provided great help to him. It is precisely because of this. Luan is very concerned about this lottery. What did it extract? At this time, in Luan's view, they are still secondary. The most important thing is whether we can save the face of my Uhuang. Luan was full of anxiety. After a while, I heard the familiar sound in my mind again. The eyes of the whole person couldn't help but widen. The expression on the face at this time is also very exciting. There are surprises, and even more incredible. Beep. The lottery is over. Congratulations to the host, the skill, Super Electromagnetic Cannon. Close black lens bracket. Super Electromagnetic Cannon. Derived from Masaka Makoto's signature technique in Scientific Super Electromagnetic Cannon. Using the principle of electromagnetic induction, the game coin emits an orange light beam at an initial speed 3 times the speed of sound, speed 1030 meters per second, like a laser. Its power can even dig through the concrete ground through which the range track passes, and the strong wind generated by the aftermath alone has surpassed the power of ordinary wind ability. Close black lens bracket. I wiped it. It's really amazing. Ohuang is really the Ohuang. I seem to have pulled out something amazing this time. Luan thought with a shocked face. I really didn't expect that this time, I would actually get the signature skill of Pao Sister. But after a brief excitement, frowning this time, it's unavoidable to get into entanglement again. The reason for the entanglement is nothing else. If it is now, after calming down, Luan also began to seriously think about the role of this ability. The ability of Sister Pao is naturally powerful. But to be honest, for Luan, who is almost full of control over Heavy Fruits now, it's really not useful. To myself, it's a bit wasteful. Holding the idea of maximizing the use of resources. Luan is going to leave it to his own people. It's just, who needs this thing on Earth? Luan frowned and fell into entanglement. In fact, Hawkeye was the first thing that popped up in his head at this time. I feel that Hawkeye in the Women's Federation has this ability. Every arrow shot out is no less powerful than a thunder laser. The combat power will definitely be greatly improved. It wouldn't exist. In the later stage of the Women's Federation, when faced with the purple potato essence, they could only fight the mobs in embarrassment. But Hawkeye is obviously not the most suitable candidate. Without him, not all the way, although he has no contradiction with Hawkeye now. But Luan is not a good fortune boy. How could it be possible to use the skills acquired in his hands for no reason? Thinking so, Luan immediately passed Hawkeye in his heart. And after that, I began to worry again. I think it's good to find someone who is good and reliable, and give me skills. It's really not easy. If it doesn't work, let's learn the piano. Luan muttered in his heart. Regained consciousness from the system space. He got up again, and was about to tell Chin to come down from the stairs. But then, I saw the Bullseye sweeping the floor at the entrance of the corridor. It was stunned again, suddenly found out that he seemed to have overlooked something just now. Yes, he seems to have bickened beside him. No, he is even more suitable for this ability than Hawkeye. That is the Bullseye. Controlled by Fiend's covenant, he is absolutely 100% loyal to himself. And the quasi-head aspect of throwing objects. The Bullseye is obviously much stronger than Hawkeye. If you look at it from this perspective, this ability doesn't even seem to be extracted for myself. On the contrary, it seems to be specially prepared for the stinky boy Bullseye. Thinking so, Luan looked up and down again, carefully wiping the floor. Can't see the Bullseye of the past half point, the top killer demeanor. The grin couldn't help but grin again. It's cheaper for you guy. He muttered in his heart, then waved again, and immediately called the Bullseye to his side. What's the matter, store manager, did you tell me something? The Bullseye carried the rag and walked in front of Luan. Asked carelessly. Luan saw this, but didn't explain much. It was a probing hand, and his right hand was like a dragon's claw, directly facing the head of the Bullseye, and suddenly grabbed it. Seeing this, the pupils suddenly tightened. In fact, when he saw this kind of attack at this time, he could completely dodge it. But right now, after hesitation again and again. Single quote. The Bullseye did not do this after all. After all, his soul has been pinched in Luan's hands at this moment. Under these circumstances, it was too easy for Luan to kill him. Just move your mind. Where do I need to do it directly? So at this moment, standing still, I didn't move at all. As for Luan, at this moment, I am also very satisfied with the choice of Bullseye. After checking the head slightly in my heart, when he spoke again, he directly ordered. Be happy, I will give you a chance. Opportunity. The Bullseye was taken aback. The voice just fell. Don't wait for the Bullseye response in front of you. Luan has selected the skill transfer function on the system panel. Soon. See you soon. Countless electric lights suddenly gush out from Luan's body. Like thousands of little snakes. Going into the nose and mouth of the Bullseye, among the internal organs, drilled past. Seeing this scene, the Bullseye was stunned. Not far away, Matt Murdock was still sitting on the sofa. At this time, there was a deep horror in the eyes. Little Matt is here, although his eyes are out of sight. But the powerful perception ability brought about by that accident. But it gave him a perception far stronger than vision. It is also by virtue of this perception. On little Matt's side, he noticed the Bullseye. Things that I didn't even notice. That is the thunder that just poured out, not from Luan's body. It's the thunder that bursts out of the void completely. This is amazing. If it came out of Luan's body. Fortunately, he understood that, on the side of store manager Lu, he also had the ability of thunder. But now, to be honest, he doesn't know what kind of mutant Luan is. Anyway, he felt that this guy was different from all the mutants he knew before. The manager of this video store. But it is far more mysterious than I thought. Everyone had different thoughts at this time. Luan didn't have too many mixed thoughts. When he raised his eyes, the main focus was still on the Bullseye. The purple electric light is still gushing out. At this time, it is considered to be completely absorbed into the body of the target eye. After a while, Luan then released the right palm that was originally pressed on top of the Bullseye. At this moment, with the right palm removed, it was Luan himself, who couldn't help but screamed in surprise. This reaction is not because of anything else. But right now, the top position of the Bullseye. The previous logo, which looked like a flying dart's target plate, has changed with the infusion of energy at this moment. There is a thunder-like pattern in the center. The appearance of the lines. It made the Bullseye's whole person's momentum, but followed a little bit of mystery. ... How do you feel? Luan looked up and down the Bullseye, followed by speaking, and then asked with interest. Hear his question. The Bullseye then opened his eyes. Then he lowered his head, but also let out a sigh of relief. With some excitement, he said again, "It feels great. I think my strength seems to be stronger." Boss. No, it's the store manager. Manager, how did you do this? Why? When the Bullseye is excited, the fundus is also full of curiosity. At this time, it is obviously incomprehensible why Luan can even grant him, similar to mutant's ability. However, it was a pity that Luan waved his hand and interrupted directly when he said this. ... Where there are so many whys, give you ability, and you can just continue asking questions, it is really troublesome. Luan puckered out his ears, and said impatiently. Yes, I understand. The Bullseye nodded. Seeing Luan, he didn't continue to talk about abilities. Also wisely shut up, knowing that this matter may involve Luan's secret, so I didn't ask any more. But although there is no question, I can't help but have some guesses in my heart. I think Luan is probably awakening, which is similar to giving abilities. Just like Apocalypse can achieve immortality through mind transfer, and copying the parasite's ability is a reason. Luan also has a similar replication capability. And besides copying, he can also give ordinary people new abilities. ... The more I think so, the more the Bullseye felt that this possibility was very high. Soon the whole person was inevitably excited again. It's just a pity that Luan doesn't know how to read minds. I don't know what the Bullseye is thinking. Otherwise, I am afraid that I have to admire the imagination of this guy. Seeing the Bullseye, there was no questioning. Luan stretched out his hand, patted his shoulder, and said again. Let's go to the backyard and test your ability. Ability, shop manager, Bullseye, even if you get an ability. Behind, the little Matt sitting on the sofa heard Luan say so. The spirit came in an instant, and he jumped up from the table with a rush. Looking up again, toward Luan's side, excitedly, said again. It's amazing, the manager, since the Bullseye can get the ability, can I do it too? Give me one too. You kid, you want to do something with supernatural powers, just play. No, I don't want any other ability, how about giving me one that can fly into the sky? Little Matt was pestering around Twitter, talking non-stop. After all, it is a child, and this curiosity is really troublesome. Luan is also a little tired of being tested by this guy. In the end, he can only make a fool of himself, saying that he is still too young. After waiting for him, he will get older, and then give him related ability. Finally, he comforted the other party. Then the next few people walked together and arrived at the backyard of Luan's house. Luan glanced casually in his backyard. His gaze fell on a large bluestone that was half a person high. Reaching out his hand again, he grabbed a handful of coins from his pocket and stuffed it into the hands of the Bullseye. He said, "Come on, try it. Right here, I got abilities new Bullseye, so I was naturally eager to try it." But after the coin is actually received from Luan, it's unavoidable to be a little uneasy again. Manager, it's the first time I use ability, I'm worried. What are you worried about? Can you still tear down this house? Just control it with a little strength. Do you see the big rock and shoot at it? Luan patted the shoulder of the Bullseye, somewhat disapproving. Okay then. The Bullseye reluctantly nodded. Then he raised his hand and tossed the coin. That moment, Luan clearly saw a lavender electric light surging from the fingertips of the Bullseye. Too late to take a closer look. The coin at his fingertips has disappeared. Immediately afterwards, I heard a boom. The light of the thickness of the fist suddenly rushed out. Like falling thunder, he smashed the bluestone in front of him fiercely. Rumble. Little Matt and Luan felt that the whole house trembled. He raised his head again and looked into the courtyard. It's not just the big bluestone that Luan pointed to just now. Right now, half of the courtyard's surrounding wall was accompanied by the slim podocarpus pine behind it. I was completely beaten by this blow. Okay, so strong. Little Matt perceives the situation ahead, sniffing the burnt scent in the air. The whole person was excited to the extreme. The Bullseye himself was very satisfied with this. Nodded enthusiastically. It is obviously not easy to feel that I can use this ability to this point just now. Turning his head again, I was about to say something to Luan. What caught your eye was Luan's face that had already begun to be green. The shop, the manager. Shut up, Bullseye, I asked you to beat Bluestone, and you beat me Podocarpus, why? Do you know, that Podocarpus cost me $1,000. I'm sorry, the manager. Bullseye said pitifully. I'm sorry, what's the use, your salary will be gone next month. Luan said angrily. What? The Bullseye was staring, but he was a little confused. Looking at Luan in anger, in fact, I really want to talk. It seems that I have come here and I haven't received a salary yet. But thinking of Luan's angry expression, he still swallowed the words back into his stomach with interest. After that, he picked up a rag. This time, he consciously dropped his head and went to wipe the table again. Don't look at the Bullseye at this moment with your head drooping. In fact, I am still very happy. After all, he got the ability of Sister Cannon, which greatly improved his combat power compared to before. It's no exaggeration to say, even if it's just a little training. But the Bullseye is confident here. At the moment, 90% of Mutant will not be his opponent. This was when he was returning to Luan before. Things that were completely unexpected. It can be regarded as a real surprise. Precisely because of this, he became more and more in awe of the Master Luan. I felt that I was obediently and signed Fiend's covenant, which is really a wise act. With this idea, in the next few days, when he started to work, whether it was cleaning the table or mopping the floor, he worked extremely hard. Obviously, I intend to take this opportunity to perform well in front of Luan. It's just a pity that his flattering behavior was purely flattering and was thrown to the blind man. It didn't attract the slightest attention from Luan at all. This is not true. Luan really doesn't pay attention to the Bullseye. But right now, he had just handed over this skill to the Bullseye not long after. In my own video store, uninvited guests came again. Make him a little big head. Luan, you said those guys, are you coming back today? When Chin squeezed Luan's shoulders that afternoon, he couldn't help but asked again. Luan stretched after hearing this. Holding the soft, boneless hands of the Chin, I was about to say a few more words. Never thought of it, it's just this knot of bones. Roar pushed open the door of the video room that was originally closed. A strong black man, now dressed in a very street style, shaking around, walked in from the door. After entering the house, he took off the earphones skillfully and called Roar towards Luan. I don't know, I thought he and this guy had been good friends for many years. But on Luan's side, looking up again, after seeing the black man walk in, his face was instantly embarrassed. Then the black man seemed to be unaware of it. At this time, he took the initiative to get to Luan's side and asked him again. Manager, has the Elvis album that I asked you to find a few days ago is in stock? I'm waiting for it these days. Can't you hurry up here? Hurry up, didn't I tell you? I really want to buy an album, and go to John's video store on the 3rd Street next door. He is full of people with this stuff. Luan said in a bad mood. The black man in front of him didn't follow him, and said, how can that work? To buy things, you still have to take care of the business of acquaintances. You are friends with the store manager, so naturally I want to buy them from you. What kind of friend? We have only known each other for only 4 days, what kind of friend? Luan asked back. The black man looked solemn for a while, and said, how can you say that, the store manager? Don't you Washaw have an old saying, it's like seeing each other at first sight. Don't you think we are in good terms? Fate. The corners of Luan's mouth twitched slightly. Turning his head here, he didn't want to look at the expression of the black man in front of him. It's not being angry, but I felt a little speechless in my heart. After a long silence, I also feel that I can't stand the other party's repeated come-ups, and I have no words to talk to. So I chose to take the initiative to find out the identity of the other party, Dow. You shield people, are you so boring now? Disguised as passers-by, just try once or twice, come to the door every day, really treat us as fools. The black man who came here on the other side was obviously taken aback when he heard Luan say this. A touch of astonishment passed in the depths of his eyes. But I raised my eyes again, pretending to not know, and wondering, shield? What shield? Store manager, what are you talking about? Why, I am a little confused. Hee, you really don't understand, or you are fake, you know better than me. Luan sneered, following the black man who looked at the blind face in front of him. He gritted his teeth and said, Nick Fury agent, with all due respect, your research is really bad. To be honest, there is really no glaring eye on Luan. Be able to recognize the meticulous disguise of the agent at a glance. But right now, on the shield side, the mistake was wrong. Let Nick Fury come to contact him. For this future shield director, the one-eyed bald head who was blind. Luan believes that any Marvel fan, even a passerby fan, can recognize it at a glance. In this situation, the other party wanted to pretend to be something. Hell's Kitchen, a music-loving kid, came to contact Luan. Naturally, it was nonsense. As early as the first day. No, to be precise, it was the first time, Nick Fury, the moment he first stepped into his video store. Luan has recognized his identity. On the other side, Nick Fury was standing in front of the counter. After a brief consternation, it was finally recovered. He raised his head again and looked at Luan. His expression finally disappeared from his previous lightness. It's a little more solemn. Looking at Luan, with a smile at the corner of his mouth, he said again. It is indeed the legendary mutant. It seems that it is not only the strength, but also the wisdom of Manager Lu. Nick Fury spoke with Yan Yu color. But right now, the words were only halfway through, and Luan waved his hand here and interrupted him directly. Okay, I'll tell you, don't come to this set with me. If you have anything, just tell me, what's super mutant's identity? I won't admit it. If you talk nonsense, I will sue you for defamation. Luan waved his hand. For Nick Fury, his identity was also broken. I didn't feel surprised. No more panic. His Shenyan system title can hide everything in traces that can be hidden. To put it bluntly, unless you see it with your own eyes. All evidence of presence can be perfectly hidden by the title of Shenyan and become an alibi. Under these circumstances, even if S.H.I.E.L.D. noticed himself, there is no reason to apprehend. Luan is confident. The opposite Nick Fury obviously knew this too, and could only respond with a wry smile. In fact, even if you have evidence, they didn't dare to shoot people like Luan at will. After all, in these few days of observation, they also concluded that Luan is not an ambitious man like Apocalypse. For such a person, it is too stupid to come up and shout to kill. So waved at this time. Nick Fury directly expressed his sincerity, said. Don't get me wrong, don't get me wrong. On our S.H.I.E.L.D. side, we don't want to be an enemy of Mr. Luan. Just like what I just said, we have seen each other and come here to be friends. Friend. When Luan heard this, he rolled his eyes out of anger and said, sorry, I'm not interested. Be friends with your people from S.H.I.E.L.D. In Luan's view, S.H.I.E.L.D. can be said to be synonymous with trouble. Be friends with them. Isn't that just unhappy for myself? So at this moment, I heard Nick Fury say so. Was waved, and ordered to evict the guests again, said. Not only do I have no interest in being friends with S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury, I am also not interested in being friends with you. If there is nothing wrong, you'd better go back and don't waste time with me. Quote. Luan looked serious. Nick Fury next to him is not discouraged. Looking at Luan, he didn't give up and said again. Don't, you used to be Professor X before, and you said that you have a very close relationship with our S.H.I.E.L.D. Why now, when we really come to the door, we are so indifferent? Professor X, very close. Luan's expression immediately turned weird. After a while, he asked suspiciously, old fellow Charles, did you tell you this too? Definitely, Project Tahiti, and parents who work in S.H.I.E.L.D. Am I right? Nick Fury didn't hide it either. Hearing Luan's question here, he blinked mysteriously. When Luan saw this, he turned his head, some angrily turned towards the chin behind him, and said again. Girl Chin, what did I say before? Charles is really unreliable. I shouldn't have helped him before, just let him become bald. Seeing this, Chin pouted. Although there is no answer. But look at her reaction right now. Obviously, I was very dissatisfied with Professor X's actions at this time. And seeing that both of them have such expressions. Here, Nick Fury smiled bitterly. Actively defended Charles, don't blame Professor X. In fact, we at S.H.I.E.L.D. have paid a lot of money in order to get the news. New friendly policy. From this angle, Mr. Liu, you have become a mutant hero again. Don't come to this set, as if you want to say it. Liu Yan's mouth straightened. Then continue. But having said that, your shield is really thick-skinned. The Tahiti plan or something, it was just my cover for Professor X before, and it didn't exist at all. Professor X doesn't know about this, don't you tell me, you don't know it in your heart, right? Nick Fury laughed when he heard the words. A week ago. He is still frustrated by the fake news. But now. Look at Liu Yan again. He didn't blush or beat his heart, and started talking nonsense again. Is it fake news? It's hard to say. After all, like this kind of plan, only the real S.H.I.E.L.D. executives know about it. You know, I'm just a small agent. The reason why I told you this, don't think too much, we just want to show you one thing, that is, we are a family. Nick Fury finished speaking, smiled and opened his hand again. It seems that with a special passion, I want to hug Liu Yan. But this action, it was stopped by a vigilant Bullseye next to him. In fact, since Liu Yan just revealed the identity of Nick Fury. With the murderous look of the eyes, it instantly locked Nick Fury in front of him. After all, it is a top killer. At this time, Nick Fury was locked on with murderous intent, and he was also very uncomfortable here. But right now, he can still be so calm in front of Liu Yan. To be honest, even Liu Yan himself couldn't help but take a high look at the young Nick Fury. I think this guy really deserves to be the leader in the future. One person created the entire Avengers Alliance with his own hands. This is still young right now. He has already begun to show off his extraordinary. But appreciation belongs to appreciation. For him, or rather, it was the olive branch thrown by S.H.I.E.L.D. Liu Yan didn't mean to think about the next thing. In this regard, it is naturally because he has been idle. Although I crossed over, I really didn't plan to join any Avengers Alliance organization. Let's save the world together. As for the other side. At the moment, compared to going to have a good relationship with Nick Fury, or a kind of high-level S.H.I.E.L.D. Here, Liu Yan, there are really more important things to do. This matter is nothing else. It's the piano. Following the Apocalypse incident, not long ago, the Phoenix Force in the piano finally ran away again. This violent beating, although compared to the last time, made the entire Xavier school tremble. The power is much smaller. Moreover, as soon as he appeared, he was controlled by Liu Yan in time. But it is also invisible. For Liu Yan, it sounded a wake-up call in my heart. He just remembered that although the piano side, it looks normal now. However, Phoenix Force, a disturbing factor, is still hidden in the body. So, this period of time, while he was salting the fish, at this moment in his heart, he was also worrying about how to solve the problem of Chin. In this case, you let Liu Yan run to S.H.I.E.L.D. to blend in. He really doesn't have this time. It is precisely this idea. No matter how clever the Nick Fury is in front of him. Liu Yan waved his hand here, still shook his head, and expressed rejection. The two had been talking like this for more than half an hour. Nick Fury, his mouth is a little dry. I found that Liu Yan's attitude in front of him was still as solid as a rock, and there was no sign of wavering at all. At the moment, he lowered his head and sighed secretly. At this moment in my heart, I have to feel a little lost. Is hesitation, do you want to keep going? It's at this juncture. The door of the originally closed video store was pushed open again. A sturdy white man Shuduking rushed in from the outside immediately. Liu Yan turned his head and glanced. Immediately recognized the identity of this stunned green. Not by others, but in the future, Nick Fury's left and right hands, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s backbone Phil Coulson. Phil Coulson also clearly knew that Nick Fury's identity had been exposed. So after I came in at this time, nothing was hidden. His eyes fell on Nick Fury. He spoke directly, yelling again, said, "Come on, Fury, headquarters, here comes the mission." Task. What task? Nick Fury was taken aback. He seemed a little confused about this sudden message. Phil Coulson heard the words and explained. In the early hours of this morning, there was a big hole in the roof of Blockbuster next to the movie theater. Witnesses said that they saw a woman wearing laser costumes similar to those in the game and appeared there. We need to go over and take a look. Take a look at the situation on the scene. Oh, by the way, according to witnesses, the woman in game costume claimed to be from some star team. Nick Fury's face collapsed as soon as he heard this. Originally, persuading Luan for so long had no results, and he was very unhappy in his heart. Now I heard the news somehow. Speak again. Naturally, I was angry and complained again, said. Please, this kind of thing, doesn't it mean that someone with a mental illness or mental disorder is making trouble? Let the police solve it. Isn't it all right? Just let us S.H.I.E.L.D. take action. Nick Fury's face was unhappy. Phil, who came in to spread the word, also looked helpless at this time. No way, you know, during the recent period, the police station and our S.H.I.E.L.D. are throwing pots at each other because of the Kim do. Unhappy. Then let other agents do it, can't it? I am busy here, too. But our location is the closest to the Pepsi House New Olihau where the incident occurred. Phil added. Seeing that Nick Fury's face was not good, he quickly added another sentence and said. Go and see, this is also our superior's order, you know. Superior. Nick Fury thought of his superiors, and it was another gas valve. But no way, he is not the S.H.I.E.L.D. director in the future. As a little detective, can't be so capricious. So it was only after a moment of entanglement. Nick Fury sighed again. In the end, it was softened. Decided to agree to the other party's request. Turning his head to say goodbye to Luan. I plan to come and persuade Luan after a while. He lacks interest, but he didn't notice, Luan behind him was already interested in it. Muttered silently in his own heart. Calculated. Laser gaming suit. Blasted roof. What other Starfleet is going to? Isn't this the opening plot of the movie, Captain Marvel? It's impossible. This time, it was the stupid big sister Carol Danvers that suddenly fell from the sky. Just thought of this. Luan sighed, but the spirit came in an instant. Don't get me wrong, it's not Luan's side. With regard to Carol Danvers, there was something crooked. But now, thinking of Captain Marvel, he thought of something else. That is Captain Marvel, the process of controlling the energy of Tesseract. Does it have a reference for the piano? There should be. After all, the energy of Tesseract is different from the mutant energy of Professor X. All belong to the category of the most magical energy in the universe. It is said that stones from other mountains can be used for jade. If you find Sister Marvel, it's not right, it should be said, Captain Marvel. Ask her how to use this energy. It should be a reference for the piano to control Phoenix Force. Thinking about it, Luan turned his head and glanced at Phoenix, still showing some childish faces. Although she didn't speak, she said something more to her. But at this time, if he lowered his head, he had already made up his mind in his own heart. It's decided this time, no matter what, you should go over and take a look. Thinking, he hasn't waited for Nick Fury to go far. So he stopped him again. It revealed that he was willing to accompany him, along with the place where Phil Coulson just mentioned the incident. What to go together, really, Luan? That's really great. Nick Fury, who had a frustrated look at the beginning, did not expect that Luan would suddenly agree to follow them to their destination. It is precisely because of this. Hearing this at this moment, the whole person couldn't help being excited. Looking at Luan again, there was light from the bottom of his eyes. Happily said, Luan, if you are willing to go with you, that's really great. It's just that you just said that you don't want to deal with our S.H.I.E.L.D. How? Nick Fury said. There are also some doubts in the eyes. When Luan heard the words, he tilted his head and glanced at Nick Fury. Did not explain much, but rather disdainfully said, what's the matter, you don't want it? If you don't, then I won't go. With that, Luan turned his head and walked towards the sofa again. Watching his reaction, where can Nick Fury dare to ask more? Naturally, he smiled and made a pleased gesture. Signal to Luan, don't take what he just said to heart. But at this moment, although I didn't ask any more, I remembered this matter secretly in my heart. Nick Fury is not a fool. On the contrary, it can be said that he is one of the few smart people in the world. It is precisely because of this. Here, it is naturally impossible to believe that Luan really suddenly changed his mind. I plan to accompany them here, go out together to relax and get in touch with each other. Compared to this answer, he was obviously more convinced that this mission came out suddenly this time, which attracted Luan's attention. For Blockbuster, suddenly appeared in the game costume woman. Nick Fury whispered in his heart. Regarding this matter, there is finally no contempt of before. It's a little more solemn. Even faintly felt that it was not impossible for the guy opposite to claim to be an interstellar visitor. Luan didn't know Nick Fury, this time just because of his words. So many things have been derived in Invisible. After taking the initiative to offer a peer invitation to Nick Fury, he turned his head to exhort. Let this guy stay in the shop and wait for him obediently. Turning his head again, he took Phoenix with him. Get in Phil Coulson's car. Along with Nick Fury and Phil Coulson. Join SHIELD's large forces. Headed towards the best convenience store near the Hell's Kitchen and rushed over. Get in the car, this is just a seat. Luan suddenly discovered a very important thing while neglecting the plot of Captain Marvel. Turn around again. Phil Coulson's gaze turned out to be weird. According to the plot in the original book, agad. What appears here right now does not seem to be the real Phil Coulson, but a disguised, shape-shifting man, Skrull in the universe. It's interesting. I didn't expect that the one leading the way at this time turned out to be a counterfeit. Luan thought. His eyes seemed a little interesting for a while. And feel the change in his eyes. Phoenix sitting next to Luan. For a moment, his gaze became a lot deeper. Looking at Phil Coulson's eyes ahead, there was a bit more hostility. Get along for so long day and night. Phoenix naturally understood Luan's micro-expressions in an instant. She had no respect for S.H.I.E.L.D. Even on the ZF side, there is no good impression. Right now after seeing Luan showing hostility, the pretty face tightened immediately. I thought that this time, they are walking with S.H.I.E.L.D. What's the secret? So right now, in the dark, he has already asked Luan's side. I want to know if I will find time to deal with Agent Phil of S.H.I.E.L.D. Give him a lesson. See Luan here. Secretly squeezed Phoenix's palm and stopped her behavior with her eyes. According to the settings in the original book, the Skrulls seem to be a peaceful race. Avertisement. Although Luan is not a villain, he is also not a murderer. So now, before the Skrull really did something on their side, he wouldn't make a move. On the contrary, he will be at ease. Nick Fury kept watching Luan's situation secretly while driving. At this moment, seeing Luan and Phoenix in the back seat, browsing between Luan and Phoenix. It is too late to analyze in detail what is the significance of this behavior of both sides at this moment. Agent Phil, who had been silent next to him, finally spoke. Said something. There was a sudden stop following the car. When everyone turned their heads and looked out the car window. Sure enough, they already felt the location of the entrance of the Blockbuster convenience store. But right now, there is no one at the entrance of the bustling Blockbuster store. Inside it seemed to have experienced a robbery. A mess. As this guy, Nick Fury and the others, and the police accompanying the case, all arrived here. Phil Coulson, it was the first time to get off the car. With the police, we checked the situation in the convenience store. As for Nick Fury, there are also Luan. At this time, the eyes were deflected, and they all looked in the direction of the corner outside the store. There was a blonde woman in weird clothes. He was holding the phone at this time. Saying something hastily. Luan turned his head at this moment, although he only glanced at it. But it was also an instant, her identity was confirmed. She was right. Silly sister, Carol Danvers. Luan looked at her, his eyes changed a little for a while. As for Nick Fury next to him, the spirit came immediately. After taking a quick walk, Luan walked in the direction of Carol Danvers. At this time, it was just before the other party finished the call and wanted to leave. Reached out and stopped her. With a friendly smile on his face, said, "Excuse me, madam, did you know that a woman blasted a hole in the roof of Blockbuster before?" The witness said that she was wearing a strange costume for laser gunfighting. As Nick Fury said, he couldn't help but glanced up and down at Carol's clothes. Okay, it's really weird. Nick Fury has a strange face. In front of him, Carol seemed to think about this issue seriously. After looking left and right, he suddenly stretched his finger to the back of Nick Fury and said seriously. Oh, you said that guy, I saw it, she seems to be heading over there. With that said, he turned his head and planned to leave. But right now, Nick Fury stretched out his hand and stopped again. Carol, who saw amnesia right now, did not have the willingness to actively cooperate. Reluctantly stretched out his hand, he could only take out his own ID, and shook it towards Carol again, said. I think we can continue to talk in depth. Madam, please show your ID, okay. ID, we don't have the habit of writing names on small cards. Carol sneered. After the previous accident, she lost her memory completely. At this time, under the control of the Clue people, he had completely regarded himself as a native Clue resident. Under these circumstances, she came from high cruising, looking at the people on Earth who had no interstellar voyage ability right now. Naturally with a touch of BUE and disdain. But although some disdain, Carol, who has integrity, still didn't hide his identity. I heard Nick Fury questioning right now. Following a stand-up, he exploded openly his identity, said. Firth, member of the Carey Fleet. Firth Carey Fleet. Nick Fury frowned. Obviously, he still doesn't believe what Carol said at this moment. But right now, after seeing Luan's attitude, it's no longer the same as the original book, and the performance is so dismissive. On the contrary, some will be skeptical. And the more so. On his side, Carol naturally paid more attention to it. A living alien who will lead the Earth. This is Firth, or Schild's first encounter. Thinking so, he frowned, and then asked hurriedly. How long are you going to stay here? When I find the Skrull who is diving into your Earth, I will leave. Sculpt, shape-shifting people, they can become any form of life, and even the other party's DNA can be easily copied, which is very difficult. Carol explained. Nick Fury, it was obviously the first time I heard this. Turning his head again, he immediately looked towards Luan, standing next to him, who kept holding his hand and said nothing. Said again with some shock. Oh my god, do you think this Skrull description resembles your friend Mystique? It's a little bit. Chin nodded from behind. As for Luan, after seeing Carol's gaze, he followed him. He showed a kind smile. After all, there should be something to ask for a while. He didn't want it to be too stiff between himself and Carol. Carol didn't know what Luan was thinking at the moment. At this moment I saw him smiling at myself. Naturally, he smiled back. However, her side is obviously not interested in the mystique mentioned by Nick Fury. So at this moment, after a short chat, shaking his head, he left again. Wait, you can't just leave like this. See Nick Fury here. Nature stopped Carol again. An alien who broke into the Earth suddenly. If she asked a few casually, she would be let go. That's a real joke, Nick Fury thought, his face solemn. Looking at Carol again, he obviously wanted to say something. But at this time, he hasn't waited for him to speak here. Behind him, Luan suddenly stretched out his hand. Using suction, he pulled him to his side. What are you doing, Luan? The sudden change made Nick Fury a little confused. Seeing this, Luan didn't explain. Directly stretched out his hand and pointed to the opposite roof. I saw a young man with a suspected alien gun, who had already targeted them in secret. Don't wait for Nick Fury to ask at this time. A laser beam shot directly from the alien guns. It hit the ground directly. All this is too late. In fact, it all happened between the electric light and Flint. When everyone reacted again, I heard a boom, where Nick Fury stood just now. It was directly blasted out of a pit with a diameter of half a meter. Looking at the pitfall, Nick Fury opened his mouth wide. But at the moment, it is too late to be horrified. Carol was able to avoid this offensive. It is angry. At this time, the fist was swung, and the energy was also beaten out like a cannonball. Click on it. The energy hit the roof opposite. Large tracts of concrete were directly blasted out by the artillery. Debris flew around. The steel bars in the roof showed signs of melting at this time. Quote exclamation mark question mark quote. Watching this scene, even if Nick Fury has determined the identity of the alien on Carol's side, At this time, it must be a little dumbfounded. What the hell, he really didn't expect that the blonde in front of him would be so fierce. Thinking so, he turned his head again and looked at Luan's expression to the rear, making him a little confused. Then he opened his mouth and asked again, Ms. Lulu, are the aliens so fierce now? How did her light wave get out? Nick Fury looked confused. Phil Coulson, who was disguised in the rear, got into the car and yelled at him again. Fury, let's go. Nick turned his head and realized that Carol had already chased him in the direction where the Skrull left. Looking back, he got into the car immediately. Returning to God, I was just about to ask, Luan, do they want to go along here? Look up again. It happened to see Luan's side, and he shook Phoenix's waist. Take advantage of the fruitful ability directly and rise into the air. The screen of Yukong flight towards the front. Wow. When all the accompanying police saw this, they were all shocked to roar. As for Nick Fury, after being astonished, he lowered his head again, but he couldn't help but cursed again, some beautifully muttered. After all, he didn't dare to stay at this moment. At this time, he gritted his teeth and stepped on the accelerator directly. Accompanied by this piercing roar, his car is also flying out. In the direction Carol left, he flew past. Carol is chasing the Skrull. Nick Fury is chasing Carol. Everyone looked anxious at the moment. I really want to talk about it. It seems that only Luan is the most at ease at this time. Flying in the air with Phoenix in his arms. Not at all impatient. He even whistled in Uzai. Luan, you. Watching his reaction. Phoenix in Luan's arms is naturally curious. Some didn't understand what medicine Luan was selling in the gourd. Seeing this, Luan smiled mysteriously, did not hide it, but explained it again. This is, just like fishing, it's said that by putting a long line, you can catch a big fish. Let's not hurry, just follow behind and take a good look, that's it. Phoenix nodded ignorantly, although I didn't understand what Luan said. But I didn't delve into it. Anyway, right now, in her heart, she already had 100% trust in Luan. In addition, she didn't care much about it. Now that Luan is here, he plans to put a long line to catch a big fish. She naturally wouldn't question it. Then he lowered his head and used his ability to help Luan in a disguise. With Phoenix Force, everyone's sight is blocked. Seeing Phoenix, he didn't ask much. Luan didn't explain anything here either. However, the Sky testified that he just said this, but he was not really just pretending to be coercive. In other words, it is deliberately following Nick Fury, trying to fish in troubled waters without any effort. But he knew it very well in his heart. Carol, who had just reached the Earth and had been brainwashed by the crew for 6 years. It's not that easy to reach. If he rushed forward, he would just rush up to the other party to explain his intentions, or tell the other party what her true identity is. It is estimated that when the time comes, it is not thanks for waiting, but an angry blaster. So at this time, even if Luan is anxious, I can only wait, waiting for Carol to find something strange. Thinking so, he probed his hand again and grabbed it on the ground. Gravity pulling, under his control at this time, is really like a fishing line. 980. In an instant, I pulled 2 bottles of Kool from the market town below, and got them in my hands. Assigned to Phoenix at this moment. After 2 people a bottle. In midair, it was like watching a movie, silently watching this chase drama. He is at the top, it is not good to be leisurely. At the bottom, Nick Fury was in a hurry to die. After seeing Carol and the Skrull in disguise, they entered the city tram one after another. He immediately picked up the walkie-talkie in his hand and started contacting headquarters, said. Suspects, on the northbound train, we are catching up. Attention, the other party is suspected of being an alien visitor, ability is strong, not weaker than the top mutant, please send someone to strengthen as soon as possible. Please send someone to strengthen as soon as possible. With that said, Nick Fury can be considered to have spared it. At this time, he stepped on the accelerator directly to the bottom. On the overpass, it started to rush. And the other side. Carol, who was chasing the Skrull, rushed to the train. It was another fight with alien shapeshifters who pretended to be passengers. The opponent is one-on-one, so the strength is naturally not as strong as Carol's side. But now, he has formed a dying old man. So when the two sides are fighting, it aroused the dissatisfaction of the onlookers. Many enthusiastic citizens stood up spontaneously to stop Carol. In order to prevent accidental injury to civilians, Carol had to slow down the offensive. This gave the Skrull people a chance to escape and ascend to heaven again. Nick Fury carried Phil Coulson and ran towards the station. The intention was to wait here and stop Carol. However, while driving, I accidentally received a call from the real Phil Coulson. It turns out that the real Phil Coulson is still collecting evidence of Corolla's crime at Blockbuster. As soon as I heard this, Nick Fury's face changed naturally in an instant. In my mind, I suddenly remembered the time I saw Carol. The other's description of the Skrull. Never thought of it. The alien that I wanted to find in my heart was sitting next to me in such a grand manner. When I returned to my senses, I immediately felt a chill, directly rushing into the forehead from the sole of the foot. Turning his head again, he looked at the fake, Phil Coulson, who had already drawn his gun. The two immediately fought together in the car. It turns out that I was wrong before. The other party only changed his identity when he was in Blockbuster. Nick Fury is here. On Luan's side, it is naturally impossible to be absent. He even reached the station one step earlier than everyone else. Sitting in a wicker chair at this time, I am continuing to drink Coke. Right now looking at the two Nick Fury who are fighting together in the car in front of them. A touch of fortune flashed across my eyes. Fortunately, I didn't play the first game. Otherwise, killing the real Phil Coulson would be embarrassing. Dull. He thought about it, and decided to help Nick Fury. So beckoning at this moment. It is also referred to as a sword, and the front is another draw. This time, Luan didn't bring Tang knife with him. He didn't even use the ability of Fujitora smiled inside the pirate. He is already 80% higher in control of the fruits. Ability has long been over-familiar with fruit. Under these circumstances, no matter what he took, he naturally developed some of his unique abilities. The ability being used at this time. It is based on Spider-Man's cobweb, special strengthening of gravity, and the ability researched out. It's called open black lens bracket Guhun close black lens bracket. At this time, he probed his hand and grabbed it forward. The originally static space in front of me seemed to become sticky in an instant. And with the appearance of this sticky feeling, a purple light wave hit directly from Luan's palm. Right now, like a chain, it was instantly entangled with the Screwman who was fighting with Nick Fury. The chains are tightened. Follow it backwards. Just listen to the boom. The front windshield of Nick Fury's vehicle burst open. Immediately afterwards, the figure of the man named Skrull was actually torn out of the car by Luan. Right now a hand shake threw it directly to his side. Nick Fury, who was fighting with the opponent just now, felt the change. Naturally, I feel a lot easier for the whole person. While exhaling, looking up again, he naturally saw the opposite, Luan and Chin sitting in the chair. At this moment, a flash of gratitude flashed in my eyes. But right now, before he could speak again, he really said the words of thanks. Luan actually let Chin use telepathy ability again. It completely blocked Nick Fury's perception of them. So right now, from Nick Fury's side, it was after Luan captured the Skrull who was about to attack him. Waved his hand, the three figures disappeared together. Watching this scene, Nick Fury, who was grateful just now, had an instant freeze on his face. No matter how he bowed his head, he would inevitably scold again. I know Luan, this guy, come with me this time, there is no good thing. What does this guy want to do? What on earth do you want to do? Nick Fury was at a loss. In fact, it is more than him. The Skrull who was transferred to the New Earth realm by Luan. Now I ask the same thing again. It's just that he raised his head and looked into Luan's gaze. But there is no more joking and playfulness with Nick Fury in the car just now. On the contrary, it was full of fright. Obviously, after just that hand. In the eyes of this skew orc. On Luan's side, it is obviously more terrifying than that Agent Fury. And looking at him in such a terrified look, Luan grinned at this moment, and then showed a bright smile. Towards this Skrull who pretended to be Phil Coulson, said again. Don't be nervous, I won't kill you. This time, come here, I just want you to bring a message to Talos. Luan talked eloquently, but at this time he was halfway through, and he was interrupted by Roar, who was shocked by the Skrull in front of him. Talos, do you still know our leader, Talos? The Skrull looked blank. Looking at Luan, he was shocked and more alert. Obviously, he was beginning to wonder if he, like Carol, was from crew. Seeing this, Luan laughed again. Hyunwoo said, "Don't be nervous, I didn't go along with those crew people. Actually, I can be regarded as a close friend of Dr. Mar. We're to make friends." The Skrull continued to be blinded. Seeing this, Luan used his prophecy about the plot, started the big flicker mode, and said again, "Definitely, the Tianma project, you know. This plan, in fact, has the inside story. What is the 3-inch tongue? This is the real 3-inch tongue." Luan smiled at Mimi and flicked wildly. How about this Skrull is an innocent race in the universe? Right now, after being frantically fooled by Luan, it actually believed Luan's remarks. Turning his head, happily went to find his boss Talos. Looking at the direction he left, Luan's mouth has a usual smile. As for the phoenix next to him, the expression at the moment was inevitably a bit complicated. Not waiting for Luan to speak, already by the side, worried, asked again and said, "Luan, will he really go to inform the Talos? I'm worried he lied to us." Luan didn't care when he heard the news, and waved his hand again. "Don't worry, I'm just selling personal affection to Taros. Even if he really lied to us, it's okay. We just wait for the next place. This is the advantage of knowing the plotline in advance." Luan is now completely in control. At this moment, it is really expected that the enemy is first. When Phoenix heard this, he was puzzled again. Confused this time, said again, "What's next?" "Luan, what you said is a bar, let's go over and eat something, just wait for the rabbit." Luan laughed. After saying this, he pulled Phoenix into the air again. Fortunately, the mental barrier on Phoenix's side has always been shrouded by them. Otherwise, just like Luan, he is always flying in the downtown area. I am afraid it will be on the front page of the news before the next day. And it was on Luan's side, rushing to the bar, when he planned to wait and see. On the other side, in SHIELD's Decreation Research Room, Nick Fury, who had just been injured in the battle with the Skew Orcs, was bandaging his wounds at this time, while listening to what the researcher was talking about. For what he got back: analysis of the Skrull's blood and flesh and blood fragments. All life on Earth is carbon-based, but the results shown by this blood are not the case. It is not carbon-based life. To be honest, this is incredible. You should bring back the thing about that guy you just fought. Among other things, it's just that corpse. For us now, it also has huge amounts of research value." The researcher spoke solemnly. When Nick Fury saw this, he stretched out his hand and rubbed himself. His eyes were a little red from the beating of the Skrull. Some were not angry. "You are nonsense. Do you think I don't want to bring that guy back? Not the Luan. Next time I go to his recording shop, I must kill this guy well. I feel that this guy was planning this thing behind the scenes." Nick Fury put on an ice pack. He said this angrily. But for a long time, I didn't hear anyone reply. I'm wondering. Turning his head again, he discovered that the researcher had left at some point. On the contrary, his own boss stood quietly behind him. Nick Fury sees this true color. Just about to say hello, the visitor waved his hand and interrupted him. After looking at the research sample placed on the microscope next to him, Kishizawa didn't care, and asked again, "Who did you just say was planning secretly behind the scenes? The Chinese kid who was with you before?" Nick Fury secretly said to himself that he was unlucky, and he really didn't expect that he would be heard by his superiors when he spoke at this time. But now, since he has already asked questions, naturally, Nick Fury can no longer pretend to be dumb. He could only speak, and replied honestly, "It's just speculation, but it is completely dominant. It should be impossible, but it is more like, he has already known the existence of these guys, and is using the power of our shield. I just want to achieve my goal." What is his purpose? I don't know this, but I don't think he is bad-hearted. Nick Fury blinked his eyes, relying on the contact with Luan over the past few days. He finally opened his mouth, in order to say a just thing. "Never thought. I said this as soon as possible." The superior in front of him suddenly became serious. Seriously, Fury Agent, as an agent, can't do things based on feelings. By the way, you just said, video store, what is that place? Luan's residence in Hell's Kitchen. Boss, didn't you let me investigate? Why, did you forget? Nick Fury looked puzzled. The superior in front of him was taken aback. Immediately, there was a rare smile on his face, and he said, there are so many upsets during this time, I'm almost fainted. Then you have to take a good rest. After all, once this stuff comes out, there will be more troubles in the future. Nick Fury laughed when he saw this. Looking at the familiar face of his superior at this time, he really didn't connect this guy with the Skrull who is good at disguising. The two had a few more conversations. Nick Fury then left. And as he walked like this, in the laboratory, SHIELD Officer Kohler, who was talking to him just now, and the researcher got together again. Both faces showed solemn expressions. Yes, the two guys in front of you are not others. It is exactly what the Skrull people pretend to be. The researcher's pretender was the Phil Coulson that Luan had previously let go. As for the present, Kohler's pretender is the absolute leader of the entire Skrull, Talos. The researcher leaned over to Talos and spoke again now, worried about then asked again, said. Sir, what should we do about that guy named Luan? I can't tell how true or false what he said before about Dr. Marr. Will. To be honest, I can't be sure, but one thing is for sure, that is, he absolutely understands the Pegasus plan, and he is not a running dog or an accomplice of the crew people. Taros spoke in a low voice. Then what shall we do now? Just go over and meet him directly. That guy is very weird. It seems to be something on this earth. Mutant ability is very powerful. I don't have the slightest ability to resist in front of him. The researcher said. Talos thought for a while and said, we must see each other, but we can't just sit back and wait. Sir, what do you mean? Didn't you just hear the video store that Nick Fury said? You take a few people over to see if there is anything about this guy. Collect it. We now have fewer and fewer Skrull people. The situation is critical. Can't allow us to take risks at will. Talos exhorted. The researcher nodded immediately and said, yes, don't worry, sir, promise to complete the task. With that, he turned his head and left directly. When going out, the researcher's white coat changed directly. In just a few steps, it turned out to be like Phil Coulson again. So grandiosely left from S.H.I.E.L.D. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.